you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles. All right, well, good morning. It is an incredibly beautiful morning today. A new colleague with me, Cielo Sharkus. Cielo just joined Raptelis. She's in our meeting office here in the Boston area. She just got her PhD in engineering and water hydrology. So she's not very smart, but
Even for a job on an island.
but anyways, she has the most wonderful why. Why are you interested in doing strategic planning work? And it's a joy for me to have her with us. It's the first time we've worked together in person. She worked with you all with the PFAS meeting that Catherine Carter facilitated. So that was her first exposure to Nantucket. Did not scare her away, and she's delighted to be here with us today. We had a great walk early and saw the sunrise, so it was a pretty nice way to start our day. And a great setting for the work that we'll do together today. So you want to go ahead and put the slides up, and who's in charge of admitting Drew? There we go. All right, there we go. So just kind of walk you through the agenda for today. We're gonna start with, we'll do some quick introductions and expectations. Rick already asked for a heads up, so I let him know that, but good, next slide. But we're gonna first start with kind of the recaps of the focus areas. You all have gotten recent updates, so they're not gonna be as in-depth as the ones you had this summer, but we want each of the focus area leaders to kind of give you just a very brief overview of what's currently underway. And Greg has had this great idea. We make these posters with all the underway items are up here. So we can kind of visually see, even if you can't read them from where you are, but what the efforts are that are currently underway. And then as things are emerging, if that's appropriate, then we'll have that conversation. Then we're going to connect to the master plan. Some of you in conversations, talked about the master plan. It's a huge undertaking for the town and for Plus. And so kind of what your role is and how that might roll out is something that I know Brooke wants to talk a little bit about. And we want to just check in, commit to the plan. Last year, you all added the focus area, healthy and thriving, healthy and vibrant. Community, changed that from quality of life and really refocused that focus area. Greg's going to share very high level some of the results of the Plus survey that he and Florencia did in collaboration with Zen City. That's the engagement platform that you're using. They did it to test the functionality, and so it's kind of nice. We have some interesting data just to share with you all to tell you kind of what the community is thinking in terms of important areas of focus. Just a quick kind of reminder of roles and how you all work with the staff on the strategic plan and how that's been working. And then one of the things that I've been really excited to watch over time, I love working with an organization over time and see how these things build themselves into the systems that you have to work together. And the strategic plan for the town has been, very much something that the board has focused on. And over time, there's been this real buy-in that's developed from the organization, how they frame things, how they talk about items that they bring you. And you all, even in conversations, talked about how people remind you of how this connects back to the strategic plan. But this year, Greg and Rick and Libby did some more work with the organization on deepening the commitment to the strategic plan. And for the first time, engage staff to develop a mission statement. So kind of adding the mission and values to the framework. And I think, Rick, are you the one that's going to share that today, or is somebody's going to share it? I put Rick on the spot yesterday, but someone's going to share kind of the work that came from an employee survey and then some work with cabinet to share with you all mission and values. And then we'll talk about next steps and get you all out of here. I think we're scheduled till 1:30, 1 o'clock. So I had 8:30 to 1:30 on my brain. 9 to 1 is even better. And they do plan to feed you in addition to the breakfast food. I think lunch is coming in. So that's the logistics. So why don't we real quick, just to go ahead and do some quick introductions. Introduce yourself to Cielo, who's new to you, but to name your role so she kind of gets that picture. How long you've been on the board, I think would be interesting for you to share also. And then just your expectations for our time together today. And as usual, you can volunteer the person on your right to go second.
I'll go.
All right, thank you.
I'm Brooke Moore. I'm on the select board. I'm in the last year of my first 3-year term, and I'm currently serving as the chair. And my expectations for today are to deepen my understanding of the strategic plan and how it informs basically what all of us do to keep Nantucket running and thriving.
Thank you. Malcolm.
Malcolm McNabb, I've been on the board, I have I'm a year and a half left,
Halfway through that.
halfway through, although had a 6-month run-in period
That's right.
before
Great.
my 2 years. Well, I think I agree with Brooke, I just want to get a little better handle on the strategic plan, how we can improve it, and where we're gonna go from here.
Outstanding. Thank you. Rick.
Rick Sears, Assistant Town Manager, and what I would like to get out of the day, I say this every year when we meet here, and I genuinely mean it. I hope that the town, selfishly, I hope the town admin comes out of this meeting with a clear direction for the following year, which we do, and it's been really great the last couple of years having worked on that. I think if I was gonna add a slightly finer point to it this year, I'd say town staff is fully programmed. And so when we get things that come through like right whales and vineyard wind and PFAS, it creates a real problem and just all the more demonstrates the importance of what we decide are the goals are really, really important ones, because we just don't have a way to deal with that egg as it travels through the snake visual.
Don't like any visuals of snakes personally, but thank you for that. All right, Matt.
I'm Matt Fee. I am in the last year of my 3rd or 4th year, after 3rd or 4th term, after another term 20 years ago. What do I want to get out of this? I hope that we can better align the town departments and commissions and departments, and I would like to find a way to get the capacity to handle some of the long-standing issues. And we have a bit of a culture of can't that I would like to start to turn into a culture of, can, with the right people in place and the right, sort of setup. And I think that we've been held back. We have a bit of a bifurcated government with everyone doing their own thing. And I think it would be great if we could get everybody pointing in the same direction. So.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Greg Tidman, Assistant Town Manager, ICEMA. I worked with her on the PFAS presentation, which was great. I've been with the strategic plan since it was a thought in like 2016. So I'm excited to see how far we've come. And I'd be happy to hear like how our first year of our real implementation strategy worked. I mean, we had some struggles along the way, staffing issues and whatever, and having worked as a focus area leader in the absence of public health director, I got to see really how busy staff is, but also how committed and excited they were to get things done. So I'm happy to help carry that on to the next year.
Great. Thank you. Libby.
I'm Libby Gibson, Town Manager. I've been with the town since 1988.
Since
and
the last,
Since
late
the mid-
in the last century, is that?
late 1900s.
In the late- I'm never gonna forgive her for saying that.
I've been the manager for 29 years. And I am really proud of the way the plan is evolving. And especially with the boards coming together on it, and everybody's really starting to point to it as this is where everything generates from. And the town staff has really evolved to do the same thing. And the focus area leaders have done a really, really good job pushing your goals as well as doing their own jobs. But they're really committed to this, and they're taking it very seriously. And with the leadership of Greg and Rick and assistance from Janet, it's really moving along really well. So I want to keep that going for sure. And kind of like what Rick said, we're strapped. And when something kind of big like Vineyard Wind or Right Whales enters the picture, we get really thrown off track. So, we are focusing on the plan and all the various goals and getting them accomplished, but adding bunches more stuff to this is just not realistic. So hopefully we can fine tune it. And, I think it's very comprehensive as it is, but I also, agree with Matt's kind of premise that all agencies in the town need to be aligned with, what the town's goals are.
Thank you. Dawn?
Dawn Holgate, I'm in my 10th year on the board, fourth term. And Matt, you're in your fourth term because you were on the board before me.
I'm not that old, Don.
Just the memory stone.
I like to do this yearly check-in to see if our goals are still aligned and see what maybe we want to reprioritize as the most important hierarchy. That's that.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Good morning, everyone. Tom Dixon, select board member, the newest member. I've been on for a little over a year and a half now, about halfway in. And I think what is good about these sessions is to hear how we're all feeling about the strategic plan, which guides the board and town admin's work. And also, I'm really interested in hearing more about what Rick and Libby said, because when these major things come up, it clearly derails normal business, if you will. And it feels like there's been quite a lot of those. And so the town was in sort of crisis mode for a while, dealing with putting out multiple fires all the time. So I really want to hear about that, because I think that affects how we do our work week in and week out. And then on the select board page, it says you should provide efficient town operations for efficient government for the town, et cetera. And I think that is what our North Star is. And the more we can tie that back to the strategic plan and work with town admin and all speak in the same voice as much as possible on saying, yeah, we're going to disagree here and there, but the more we speak on the same page, the better. And then I think I would just bring up one challenge, which is a lot of stuff that we do is very complicated, or the town does is very complicated. Things like PFAS and et cetera, and getting information out there as on such an awesome job that Florencia and Haley and all the department heads and town admin do. I keep coming back to that, and I mean this kind of rhetorically, but how we can continue to increase knowledge of kind of what our long-term goals are and where we're going. That's something I've been talking about at Affordable Housing Trust. How we're all thinking about that, so that some of the noise out there around a project or certain projects that the wider goal of housing that's on the strategic plan doesn't get lost in some of the noise out there. So I know those are challenges for every level of government throughout the world, but just something I was thinking about.
Janet, you're out there, but with us today, would you do your introduction?
Sure, I'm Janet Schulte, and I've just figured out I've been with the town 7 years, probably 4 in this role, a strategic planning advisor, although I was starting to peek at it when I was at Culture and Tourism as well. I'm excited that how much engagement has gone on in the staff level with implementing this plan. And it's brought a level of consistency, I think, to the kind of work that's going on. Hope we can demonstrate that today. And I would echo that even in the crisis that you've had to face over the summer months, the plan has been carried forward by the hard work of the focus group leaders. So it really speaks to me about how well this has been crafted and you all show a commitment to it.
Thank you. The focus area leaders have been invited today, to come to kind of contribute via Zoom, so we will get to them as we get to their, each of the different focus areas. So thank you, and glad that Janet could join us, although I'm sad she's not here in person this time. But let's go ahead and jump into kind of, norms, the same old stuff that you guys know, with just good civil behavior and let people, speak when they're speaking and not have the sidebars and that. So first of all, we want to do the recap of each of the focus areas, and I'm gonna have Greg kind of toss it to the focus area leaders. And so the first one I think is housing. So Christie's out there, I guess, and Greg.
So how do you want to work this? Because we have them here, as Julia explained, we have the aspirational statement and initiatives of some goals and strategies that are underway, or even some completed. Like Christie has, like they've hired somebody, but that's going on this year. And then I don't think for right now, Julia, but I think part of the discussion is going to be other emerging priorities that the board wants to take on for that focus area. And if that happens, does it relate to anything that's going on? Does something need to move off? Something need to go on? So I did send photos of the boards to the focus area leaders online. So I guess, Christie, if you just want to give a summary of what you guys have been up to this past year and your initiatives underway, and then we can go from there. Perfect.
Perfect. So housing has been very busy this past year. We have 5 goals that were put forth from the select board. The first 2 goals revolve around municipal employee housing. And some of the initiatives we've taken up have been securing the seasonal communities designation, which was included in the governor's Affordable Homes Act, which is giving us some new tools and allows us to use federal and state funding for municipal employee housing. We've also started up an employee housing focus group that includes cabinet members to establish housing guidelines and goals. And with that, we hired a rental property manager to help us manage. We have a little over 40 units that we're managing between town-owned and rented properties. And we continue to work with the state's Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities to secure municipal preference when units go through the lottery process at the state. While that hasn't been approved, we are hopeful that the new seasonal communities designation may open that door. And in the meantime, we've been able to secure market rate or units above 80% area median income to have a municipal preference. And things that we are working on related to providing year-round incentives for rentals. We collaborated with Housing Nantucket to relaunch the Lease to Locals program. That this provides an incentive to convert an underutilized dwelling, whether it's short-term rented, part-time rented, or just a second dwelling that wasn't occupied, and converting that into a year-round rental. The Affordable Housing Trust supported that with a grant of $450,000 in hopes of expanding to 22 new properties. We've also issued the request for proposals for the trust-owned parcels located on Orange Street, Vesper Lane, Bartlett Road, and Amelia Drive. Those will be coming back to us early next spring, and we'll be able to move forward on building those units. It's a little over 60 units of rentals across the different parcels. The next goal is to achieve safe harbor. And we have a 2-year period of safe harbor that is expiring in December. And my office and the Affordable Housing Trust has been working on a variety of different plans to ensure that we stay in safe harbor. As with most things with housing on Nantucket, they change by the minute. So I feel like every month we've had a different plan, but we have secured enough units at this point to submit our application, and that includes units from Richmond's Gooseberry Place development, Habitat for Humanity's Homes for Homeownership, and Richmond's Sandpiper 2 homeownership units. So we'll be applying in the next few weeks to secure 2 more years of safe harbor. We've also worked, the trust has worked on kind of a strategic plan on how to coordinate all the requests for safe harbor and the addition of units. And we are projecting that by 2027, we'll be at our 10% goal through the state of reaching that SHILES number. And lastly, goal number 5 relates to home ownership opportunities, and the trust has worked a little over a year on creating the program guidelines and applications for a year-round deed restriction pilot program. And that's now going through the finance department. It needs to be issued as an RFP, and then we'll be able to review the applications and start securing these deed restrictions. So we're hoping by the beginning of the winter into the spring, we'll have a lot of movement on that program. And we've provided grants and loans to Habitat for Humanity in Richmond for their home ownership opportunities that are going towards our safe harbor this year. The quick recap of the goals and progress to date.
That's fantastic.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Julie, are you thinking, do you want to go through them
No,
all
we'll go
first?
through each presentation,
Okay.
yeah, and then we'll check in. So I think transportation is next. Yeah, is that right?
Good.
Yeah.
Right, is that right? Yeah.
So Mike, are you out there? Or you?
It'll be Drew.
Oh, Drew, sorry. Or we can come back if he's not there.
You guys, no, I'm
There
here.
he
I'm
is.
just trying to unmute myself and get my video on.
Thank you. There he is.
There we go. Thanks. As you all know, Drew Patno, Director of Public Works, Transportation Focus Area Leader, but Mike Burns is also here to assist. He's been instrumental in this process and involved in a lot of these projects for a lot longer than I have. I just wanted to do a quick recap of the 3 goals and then walk through some of our ongoing projects and initiatives that we've been working on. So goal number 1 is to create a complete network of sidewalks and multi-use paths that would allow people living in the Mid-Island and in the downtown core to access our full range of services without the need for a car. Goal 2 is to shift the commuter mode of choice from driving alone and promote the use of other modes of transportation and their safe interaction with one another. With that being said, goals 1 and 2 are obviously very much kind of intertwined and interrelated. And that's seen in a lot of the projects that we have going on. Goal 3 is to continue to evaluate downtown parking management system based on demand management principles that achieves or is measured by 85% occupancy of public parking spaces. So a little bit of a standalone goal, more unrelated to goals 1 and 2. But I did want to walk through some of the projects that we're working on. So of course we have our fiscal year 25 annual roadworks. That's paving, bike paths, sidewalks and cobblestones. We are nearing the end of the final design and easement takings and soon to be bidding of this Surfside area transportation improvements projects. So that's Lovers, Orkawa, and Monahans, and that supports goals 1 and 2. Which you'll see is kind of a theme for some of these projects. Newtown Road reconstruction, same thing, finalizing easement takings, final design and cost estimate are completed, and we're hoping to bid that before the end of the year as well. That also supports goals 1 and 2. Milestone Road at Pulpus Road intersection and the bike path extension from Monomoy Road to the Pulpus bike path behind Island Lumber. That is being, there was a pre-construction meeting recently that is being, that was designed and is being the construction is being overseen by Mass DOT. And that construction is expected to start in the next couple months, which again also supports goals 1 and 2. Mike and I are also working on the design and planning for a couple similar projects, which is the Sparks Avenue side path, Tom Nevers Road bike path, and Wawinit Road bike path projects, which also support goal 2 to shift the mode of transport for commuters. Additionally, Pleasant Street and Williams Lane Complete Streets project that was recently brought before the board for the pilot one-way program to help inform final design. So that's been kind of preliminary designed, but looking for some direction and feedback before heading into further complete design of that. And then Pleasant Street and sidewalk improvements, which is the other stretch of Pleasant from Five Corners out to Main Street. That project's a little bit in its infancy, but consultant and town staff are working to advance that corridor as well. And then additionally, milestone improvements, which are all Mass DOT projects, and that includes milestone rotary reconstruction, Nobody Farm intersection improvements, which may also be a rotary, and then widening of Milestone Road from the rotary to Bunker Road. As you can tell, there's a lot of projects on Milestone or off of Milestone, and a number of those are being championed by Mass DOT. And almost all of the projects that I just went through are all very tangible, which is unlike some of the other focus areas. These are very much planning, design, and construction projects. But I also wanted to highlight some of the strategies or initiatives that we're working on. To support goal number one, we've worked to create and are constantly reviewing an existing network of all our sidewalks and multi-use paths. The sidewalks is complete. The multi-use paths should be complete in the next month or two. We're also working to identify gaps and necessary improvements based on all of that data, and then take it a step further and prioritize improvements and develop sequencing and schedule, which includes a lot of the ongoing projects, but other things that have been identified or will be identified for improvements, but aren't kind of programmed yet. Obviously, I think, as you all know, a lot of these projects take many years from infancy to implementation. So we're juggling a lot of these projects and also trying to be mindful of, our capacity and even just kind of a community capacity, taking into consideration the asphalt plant and other contractors and kind of their capacity, and being mindful of construction fatigue. As far as goal number two, the goal is to provide facilities for biking and walking. We actually had a summer intern this past summer develop a map and identified improvements to bike rack, our current bike rack inventory at public facilities, specifically beaches, downtown areas. If we want people to bike, it's not just about providing a bike path to get them there, but when they get there, what do they do with their bike from a safety, security standpoint as well. And that helps us be more efficient kind of with the limited space that we have, and all the people that we have, especially in the busy summer months. Another strategy as part of goal number two is to implement a range of economic disincentives for driving alone, and incentives such as fare-free transit for shifting the mode of transportation. I think it's pretty well documented that ridership essentially skyrocketed as part of the fare-free transit program, which is very, very exciting. I think a part of that is that it was free, but also that there was a lot of really good kind of advertising and reminding of people that the bus exists, and a lot of people, goes right by your house or very close to it. So it's great to see something like that be as successful as it was, kind of right out the gates. And then lastly, goal three is to implement an improved parking management system. I know there's been a lot of talk about that over the years. More recently, with the evolution of all that's going on at the 2 Fairgrounds parking lot, we've kind of eyed that as potentially a first step towards improving a parking management system. And I know that town admin, project management office, Mike Burns, transportation program manager, the police chief, and the DPW have been involved with kind of evaluating different possibilities for that challenging parking lot, and hopefully finding something that works going forward that may be able to also be implemented, for example, in the downtown core and some other areas where we have parking challenges. So that is my recap. We obviously have a lot going on, both in the short term and the long term.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Drew. I think the next one must be Jeff.
Yeah, I think it's environmental leadership and Jeff.
All right, good morning, everyone. Again, Jeff Carlson, the Natural Resources Director and Focus Team Leader for Environmental Leadership. So it's been a busy season for us as well since last time we even provided our update to the board a few months ago. Just to kind of go over things really quickly and at a high level, and then we'll mine in a little bit. Our 3 basic goals. The first goal that we have inside of environmental leadership really focuses on solid waste management. Chris Lowe has really been, doing the lion's share of the work on that and been doing a really great job. moving our kind of our sub goals forward on that. Our second goal relates to implementing the select board adopted water resources management plan. It's been a really interesting season for that one for a lot of different reasons, and we'll talk about it more specifically in a second. But Emma Morgan, our water quality specialist, has really been building that program out for us and really making some great strides in putting that together. And then certainly last but not least, our third goal inside of that is to incorporate the recommendations of the Coastal Resiliency Plan into capital planning, which we broadened out just a touch. Not only to do that, but also to, make sure that we're just incorporating kind of resiliency principles into our longer term planning efforts, especially related to infrastructure. Not just through capital process, but through design and planning a little bit. So to jump in a little bit further, a lot of the work with the solid waste goal related to obviously what's coming for us at the solid waste facility is the upcoming RFP and things for review on operations of that unit. Some of the upgrades, including some new frac tanks to better deal with some of the leachate. And those are all underway. Those proposals are all under review. Again, Chris and his team are putting those together. I think one that we're kind of all excited about. They have kind of completed the skeleton and framework for a kind of enhanced food waste processing program, where instead of it being mixed in with the regular waste, being able to separate food waste out and composting and using it for other things. Sorry, I'll talk louder. Rick just told me I'm not loud enough. So is that a little bit better?
Yeah,
Sorry about that. Very rarely am I accused of being too quiet. So
But we were afraid to say anything, but
it's all right. So I'll speak up. My microphone's been a little funky lately too. So we'll just kind of jump down into our water quality goals that we have. So there's a lot going on, and I really wanted to jump into something really important that's come up with this, and it's been touched on earlier, for having the bandwidth to kind of cover changes in program. And the final goal here was to look at, staffing levels and things necessary for folks to assist with field work and other things that come up. And we've really kind of pivoted that, and Vineyard Wind gave us a really great opportunity to pivot on that. And in doing so, building a network of kind of like professionals to help provide us ways to be more efficient. And we were able to put together kind of an on-the-fly microplastics and survey through that really kind of made our sampling program forced to be more efficient. So we did that not by increasing staffing, but by improving efficiency and finding experts to help us. Other than that, all of our other goals, we obviously have Nantucket Harbor watershed. We're redoing the watershed and looking at groundwater sampling. That project is currently underway. We're looking at trying to maybe do that for Sackatchewan coming up, and then having kind of a set rotation for updating those plans going forward. And then kind of going through, we're also looking at all of our different studies for benthic biodiversity. Those are underway. We've just approved that contract for some of those benthic surveys. We've increased our water quality sampling sites. We've been working with teams like the Land and Water Council to improve the number of sampling sites, the locations. Obviously we've collaborated a little bit with Mariah Mitchell on their in situ buoy that's there to collect data for public use as well. For pond openings, we've teamed up with MIT and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute to really study those openings to make sure that we're doing those in an efficient manner and really getting successful results from our pond openings. And we've really rolled out our harmful algal bloom program this year. This is the last week for it, and then we move into that time of year where hopefully we stop seeing those just because the weather changing and getting colder. Obviously, we continue these warm temperatures. We'll probably push that out a little bit, but we've really made some big strides in that. And then last but not least, as far as coastal resiliency planning, I know Matt has probably seen this a lot being on crack, and a lot of it gets discussed with the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. But we really have been working towards making sure that as far as capital planning goes, that we're incorporating the goals of that plan within there. We've been working with, the consultants for the town's master plan, to try to make sure resiliency is in there. There's a new resiliency section within the Nantucket Harbor's action plan, that's coming in there. But it's really just kind of a cultural change to be sure that resiliency is included in all of these aspects, and trying to roll that out to the community, whether it's through meetings with the Civic League, meetings with other like organizations, but trying to be sure that those principles of resiliency are kind of included community-wide. So happy to say all of our goals and initiatives are at least underway, and looking forward to getting some feedback and seeing where all these programs go in the next couple of years. And as always, if people have questions along the way, feel free to let us know, and we're happy to provide anyone any information they're looking for. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And next, efficient and effective.
Okay.
Rick, you're supposed to be on Zoom.
We actually did.
All right, so effective and efficient town government. So the first goal was to support the municipal workforce, including central municipal facility, DPW facility, and employee housing, as stated last year. We moved employee housing with housing, as you already heard from Christie. So the first strategy was to build a new DPW facility in a logistically and efficient and coastally resilient location. I think you guys have had plenty of updates on the DPW facility. You probably don't need me, or if you want an additional update, Drew's still on. So, but I'm thinking maybe we move on. The second strategy under that goal is around DEI, and it was the items we had listed on it were pretty tactical, but without a DEI director, we really haven't gotten into the tactical aspects of what we're going to do around DEI. I think we've been taking kind of put words in your mouth, Libby, so you can stop, or rather deliberate approach around what we do next in DEI, recognizing that a lot of aspects of DEI are quite fluid. There's lots of attrition of DEI directors. There's I don't know if you guys saw the New York Times article a couple of weeks ago about DEI on major college campuses and how divisive it's actually become. So I think there's just a lot, but anyways, we have an RFP that's either out or will be out in the weeks. It's in your email. Okay. So it's very close to being out, and that is for a consulting firm as opposed to obviously it would be an RFP. It was a town employee. So we're going to look at that, see what kind of reactions we get back, responses we get back, and then determine our next steps. The second goal was to continue to evaluate total compensation in support of recruitment and retention. We did the class and comp study a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Because we contribute to other towns' market data around compensation, we also are able to request it back from them. Amanda did a bit of a study in the last couple of months. I would say it's not as comprehensive as the Siegel study was, but it's what we had access to. And I think we kind of determined that we thought our salary levels were competitive with other towns and municipalities around the state and a couple of the other places that we managed to get data from. So that's competitive without the Nantucket factor. So we still have done nothing about a Nantucket factor. But anyway, so we did do the refresh. We did not recommend any salary changes out of the refresh from a competitive with other towns perspective. The third goal was to continue to make strategic investments in municipal facilities. Drew has been, along with SMRT, has been building out a 3-year plan for building maintenance. I'd say we're not yet at the stage of RFP, but we do have an inventory, we have a status. We've done an evaluation of most of the buildings. We have, we know where, when the building envelope in a particular property is in particularly bad shape, where the interiors, and the plan is essentially to do the building envelope, to do the internal, what do you call it, the mechanicals and whatnot, and then you do the finishes third. So they're working on that plan with SMRT. And then the second strategy into that is around our island home and developing the program and design and budget for the construction. That's obviously, you've heard plenty about that recently as well. I think you also know that our current big lift, I'd say we're going full steam ahead. We are in parallel trying to negotiate the lease terms with Sherburne Commons, and that seems to be one of these things that just goes back and forth and back and forth. The goal 4 was to invest in technology and cybersecurity, and just real briefly, I think our activities around that are largely business as usual, sort of making sure that we had up-to-date software and hardware to ensure that our security posture is what it should be. Last month was cybersecurity month. Everybody got cybersecurity training, and we added a new module around understanding and responsibly using AI in the workplace. And then the 5th goal was, which we have not done anything with, which is increase the diversity. I shouldn't say it quite like that, but increase the diversity of municipal boards, commissions, and committees, and streamline our onboarding and orientation processes. We have worked on the onboarding and orientation process piece, and I think we probably say that we're making steps. We're not making leaps and bounds, but our onboarding process and is substantially better, more organized than it was a year ago at this point in time. And so I'd say we're going in the right direction there. Increasing the diversity. The first part is increasing the diversity of municipal boards, commissions, and committees. We haven't touched yet, so that's it.
Actually, before I jump into health, environment, community, I want to take an opportunity to kind of add to efficient, effective government. I attended a Mass Municipal workshop on strategic planning last June. It was up in Danvers. There were roughly 35 communities that showed. It's pretty well attended, and less than a quarter of those communities have a strategic plan. And the discussion was really the base, like, how do we get it going? And how much work is it going to take? And where does it lie? And who manages it going forward? And all the struggles. So there were some presentations from like Lexington and Hingham, Brookline, and I can tell you, we are ahead of the game. And it all came down to the willingness of their boards. So it's a pat on the back for you guys, because without the board support, there is no strategic plan. And things that they stressed were taking time away to actually review your plan at least annually. Some towns like Lexington do it twice a year, and we do that. They have a separate retreat to focus on it, and to make it kind of a safe place, safe space to be able to do it, and we do that. And also to recognize that it takes resources. And like, it's not just dumping more on, but it's supposed to be woven into the fabric of your daily operations, but also get more. And where do you want to go? And that it takes a long time. And I just want to point out that we're doing really well. And I talked to some of the other communities there who are just trying to get it off the ground, and they're like fish out of water. So good for us. I also want a part of the efficient operations is this past year, as part of the implementation strategy, each of the focus area leaders presented to the select board once per month to kind of keep it fresh, to keep the strategic plan in your minds, and to hopefully give a little more focus on all the staff that are working on these projects and initiatives, and just to give them a little more time to assign and face time to the select board. And I think they did a great job. So I thank all the strategic focus leaders and all the staff, and also want to recognize Mike Burns, for sticking it up today online. So, Healthy Environment Community just probably got the short straw this year. I was a focus area leader in the absence of a public health director, so, not my forte. So I really commend Jericho Malin for helping me with this, because without him, nothing would have been accomplished. And also Janet was very helpful, kind of nudging me along to try to help get this together. But the new public health director, Roque, he knows that he's gonna be taking this over. I was just getting this across the midfield right now, and then he's gonna take over. But there are only three, as you all recall, Health Environment Community used to be Quality of Life. As a new iteration from last year's strategic plan update. And we specifically focused the words healthy wanted to be in there. So the goals started to reflect that. The first goal was to operationalize DEI into town operations. And not that we punted it, but in the absence of DEI director, Jericho and I did meet with the DEI work group, the staff work group, of which Jericho is a member. And we determined that we're kind of a fish out of water with that one, so we didn't really make much headway. One of the recommendations was that having DEI within Health and Environment Community sets the expectations that DEI in the town is also outward focused towards the community. So we want to maybe bring that to attention for discussion, and that maybe DEI in general belongs to what Rick was just saying within efficient and effective government. But that is just an observation that came out of the work group. The second goal was to be to expand and deliver support services for the community. And out of that kind of came a study of the Health and Human Services Contract Review Committee. We wrote a scope, hired a consultant, had surveys, which you were all members of, partook, I believe, as well as the community, and then there's a report. Now, I actually wasn't part of that, so I don't really have much to report out, but it was done, and it was, I also want to point out that Jericho came to the town when we did the scope and asked for strategic plan funds. So we put strategic plan funds, and it shows how it can work. We had, this was not planned, we had the resources and we were able to do it. So I thought that was excellent. Next up is a community needs assessment that comes out of goal 3, which is also I forget it here, but it's to be able to actually it was out of goal 2, which is to expand services to the community. And we've already started a scope of work. Jericho's taken the lead on it. It's about the same time that the new director was coming on board, so it kind of waited a little bit, but we're ready to start making some recommendations about committing another community needs assessment. Jericho has been working really hard through the grant process. He's partnering with more local nonprofits, even outside of the CRC process, in order to help to expand community services and so forth. Public health services. One of the recommendations that have come out of this with discussions with Jericho is there's not much health in the goals. There's no mental and physical health for employees or the community. So maybe it's something to think about in our next iteration of Healthy Environment Community. And I also want to point out that Jericho also came to the town for more strategic fund money to create the mask program, to continue the mask program with the schools, and because we have the funding available, it works. So kudos to Jericho, and I'm glad that that our little pool of money for a strategic plan is working. And that's all I got. Like I said, just got the foot thrift. And also thank you to Dr. McNabb, because he worked with Jericho and I was just busy. So Julie, I don't know how you want to.
That's great. We're good. Thank you so much. So again, this is kind of context, where you've been, what the town has been working on. And I think you start to hear how much it is part of the interwoven with the daily operations. And certainly, as you all think about, what lies ahead, you may have want to have some conversation about what's next. I think what I'd like to do is go ahead, there's kind of two pieces that I think would be helpful to do. And the first is go ahead and please and touch base on the master plan and how it relates to the work that you all are doing and kind of connecting the strategic plan and the master plan. And before you take a sip of hot coffee, I am gonna put you on the spot. I know that this is something that, I'll talk to my graphic first, but this is something that came up in conversation with Brooke, and we use this graphic when we're talking about the different types of planning efforts that we see communities undertake. And you know, the longer term plans are the comprehensive plan, your master plan, which I think you have a requirement. Is it every 10 years you have to update the master plan, or is it something like that? And so, you know, that's about the physical development of the community and what that will look like. Typically, it has the longest term view of any of the types of planning that you might do. But then you all know that there's so many other types of long-term plans that you have with coastal resiliency, water quality. We see street tree master plans, parks and recreation master plans. They all feed into the CIP and other types of efforts that you all are doing, your communities do to build out the physical infrastructure to make the community work. Skip the middle. The governing body, the select board, you know, sets priority, takes your appropriation on an annual basis to town meeting, and all of it gets operationalized in the work plans of the town's departments. What pops up in the middle here is the strategic plan, and I like this graphic because it connects everything towards the long-term success and what you're looking for. But the strategic plan, it kind of fits in the middle in terms of timeframes. It's something that you might update annually, but it has that kind of 3 to 5 year horizon. You see many of the efforts that the town has been, you know, started and completed, but they take multiple years to do. And certainly even the things that, you know, when we went through the process of identifying what's been operationalized, there's so much that you didn't used to do that now are just part of the way that you do business out of town. The strategic plan reaches back to the comp plan and these master plans, kind of pulls everything together strategically and then feeds the priorities that you all set and that then ultimately get funded through the appropriation process. So I just wanted you to have this image of how these things connect as you think about this major effort that's underway to do the town's master plan. So Brooke, did you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I mean, when I talked to Julia, what I really thought the master plan process is a real opportunity for increased community engagement. You know, we have some themes of concern that I see resonating around the community that in the absence of a clear picture of where the board and the town kind of wants to go on, I think the things that sort of I see as the greatest, the loudest areas of concern, which are development, however that's defined, right? That's just a word that gets used, overdevelopment, too much development. And that translates into traffic, which is another piece, and transportation. And so it feels to me like we have an opportunity maybe to engage the community and, okay, so how do we define what that complaint is? What is the issue that people are concerned about? Define it more clearly. It's a term that people throw around meaning very different things. And then some concrete proposals to address those concerns. And really, before we go to any kind of warrant article stage, to have that collaborative conversation that people seem to be clamoring for. And I'm not saying in time for Springtown meeting necessarily, but as part of the master planning process, that we can say, okay, if you want less development, what does that mean to you? And then what things are you willing to consider concretely in terms of proposals? If you want less waiting in traffic, what is that? How does that translate into concrete proposals? Rather than working from the proposal up, start from a more general, how do you define this issue? And work our way down into concrete proposals. And that's kind of what generated that thought for me.
So you're, you're imagining then that the town would take on a specific community engagement exercise, a series of meetings, however that looks like, that would contribute to conversation that appears then in the master plan. Yeah. And just so, because I have to get my alignment in order, so the master plan is being undertaken by the planning board, that is the.
Correct.
Yeah, planning board, and so just talk a little bit about how you see that, because of select board, planning board, how that all relates.
Well, so I'm hoping, when we met jointly with the NPDC, well, first of all, we had that meeting last year where all the boards were there, and then we had a joint meeting with the NPDC, and since then, we've been working on scheduling what came out of that meeting, which is a joint chairs meeting and chairs and vice chairs, to really talk about how we can work together and identify not only whose role is what, but how we can actually make sure the work where each board is doing is in concert in a way that can be productive and be perceived by the community as collaborative and cooperative and not going in different directions. And so really working together, and I think that works across, Board of Health joint meeting with the select board on PFAS and identifying areas of common concern. But in terms of the master plan, I think of that as I guess the comprehensive plan is probably where my thinking really is more, but that we're in the master planning process. How do we envision what Nantucket should look like in the next 10 years? And solicit input from the community, but ultimately you can identify where you want to be, but then you got to figure out how you get from here to there. And I think that's where we get lost, is people understanding what the actual things that they need to agree to at town meeting, at the ballot, to get us from here to there, and maybe being more concrete about having that conversation with the community, the wider community. And I think to Tom's point earlier about information and engagement, does it also help then to inform the community about the complexity of getting from here to there, that it's not as simple as just saying we want to X, but how do we do it? And help the community understand that more and feel as though they're having some input. And I know my go-to is community engagement, and everyone's like, it's so much work, but I think we can't do it. I don't think we can move from smaller constituencies picking at smaller issues as a way to get a larger concern addressed. That we need to be talking about bigger picture.
Yeah, Matt.
I kind of think we don't have to go back to, I think the comp plan laid out what we wanted to do. I think the problem is that we're not following it a lot of times, that those constituencies have been able to pick parts of it for their own benefit and or influence what is tackled. And so I almost think that if we're gonna have I think planning requires, public engagement. I think there's a best practices for it that we need to begin to adopt. I think the community is split, 50-50, 52-50, give or take, from all our surveys, et cetera, and bringing them together will require showing, here are our choices, here are our options, and getting them, in that sort of leadership and that sort of planning across a bunch of different categories. And I think that we pick and choose, on transportation wise, we're picking bike paths, and, we wanted a free bus in the comp plan. It took 20 years, but we got it, so it was in there. And I find this at work. If you write it down, eventually, that sheet gets buried, and eventually it comes up and you go, oh, we did most of it. How did we do that? So eventually it happened, but there are certain things that we get stuck on, sort of, charging for parking, valuing a public good, so that it's not, cars are not parked on Cliff Road for, a year at a time, just outside of the traffic, just outside of the parking district. We need to figure out how do we move forward on those things? And I think that's, you know, that includes public engagement, so people understand why, you know, some people help make the choice to engage and to do it. And so I think some of this is, you know, I agree, it's staffing. Some of this is saying, you know, and it's staffing and ownership. I sent a Aspen Community Voice link the other day to everybody, because it was interesting to me. They had things they were doing, and right next, you know, they'd say the projects, right next to it, who's taking care of the project, and then if there was a survey, the survey was linked to a certain date, there were updates and an explanation of why for each thing. So those things happen because they're assigned to more likely to happen because they're assigned to somebody, and we're starting to do that. We're heading that way with this, and we're doing that with Forensia. But I think, so, and then the other point, I've got a bunch, but the other one in this realm is I think that new things are gonna come along. You know, we are gonna have stuff that's gonna happen. We have to set up to be able to handle that, because if you don't, they just grow bigger and then they're even worse to deal with. You know, so if you deal with, pick on Turo, if we had dealt with Turo 3 summers ago, it wouldn't become a, you know, it wouldn't be a potential lawsuit and everything else. And so I think that there's, you know, I understand us wanting to, you know, stay directed on certain things, but in the course of the, you know, so we have to find a way to have another person, you know, set aside, or I don't know, we have to find a way to be able to have the capacity to deal with things that we can deal with rather quickly, so that they don't grow. So
just kind of concerned about staffing and capacity. I also heard you say that from a community engagement perspective, you imagine what Brooke is talking about would be cared for in the work plan of that project?
well, I think it's part of, you know, sort of getting, especially these things that are contentious, there needs to be outreach and engagement more than just a, you know, a survey.
Yeah,
And more than just a survey that the same 100 people fill out, you know, the people that we need to find a way on, depending what it is, to have that best practices, you know, bring people in and give them, here are our options. We did a really good job with it with the downtown sidewalks. You know, and the people that cared about it from everywhere came, and the people from downtown came, and we had things and we drew them on a board, and we actually got some stuff done that we hadn't done in 20 years. We need that, we need enough capacity to do that on other things.
so just wonder kind of how you all imagine connecting this idea with the work plan that's being devised by the planning board. I just kind of, how does that work from your all's perspective? What's your role? What's your lane? How do you work with the planning board? Is this the conversation with the chairs that you're talking about? How do you staff it so that it happens the way you want it to happen?
Well, it's additive, obviously.
It's additive.
I mean, it has to be additive because of all the, we have to find the resources. Either staff or consultants to add this public, it's more work. Let's just recognizing that. But for me, I mean, I think the way I want to describe this is people have these sort of general ideas about things they want changed. But where you get the best input, and to Matt's point about the sidewalks, is a specific conversation about specific ideas that people have something to chew on, rather than an amorphous conversation about what overdevelopment means to them. So I'll give an example. I was talking to a group of people, and I heard a lot of, there's too much development, you gotta stop development, you gotta stop development. And I said, okay, here's a crazy idea. What if we reduced everybody's ground cover by 20%? I know it's not feasible, but as a thought exercise, let's just across the board, go to town meeting and say, everybody agrees to give up 20% of their development rights. Would you vote for that? And they all said no. And so my point here is that unless people understand what the shared sacrifice is to get to a goal that affects major change, that they want in a sort of a global way as they think about it, it boils down to actions that require common sacrifice or shared sacrifice. And it's easy to get people to come and talk about sidewalks when their store is on a sidewalk. It's a lot harder to get people to come and talk about reducing development when they don't know what that actually would mean to them personally. And that's what I'm trying to get to is throwing out concrete ideas to achieve a goal. And let people chew on those ideas and understand. And maybe build consensus or enough support around some of those ideas that we can actually get somewhere instead of just continuing to talk about it forever,
Yeah.
right?
So very kind of hands-on, almost like design shred, but in the
Yes.
theoretical sense of people making trade-offs and what that looks like.
Yes,
So what I've done is I wrote on a sticky note, and you tell me if these are the right words, all of you, provide resources to ensure a robust community engagement effort is part of the master plan updates.
yes.
Okay, and so it's here now as an idea. I'm gonna put it under efficient and effective town operations.
Oh, please don't. That's
Sorry,
Thanks, Greg.
And yeah, I mean, maybe if it's someplace else, but it seems like putting that up there, I mean, we want to first of all, make sure there's a consensus of the board that as a body, this is something you would want to focus resources on. And then we step back and think, okay, kind of how does this align with, you know, who's the owner of, just like we were talking about, who's the person in charge of the master plan update? How is that work plan? What's already in it? What do we need to make additive to ensure that the select board's priority becomes part of that work plan? So does that make sense from a process perspective? Yes?
Yes.
Libby, does that make sense to you? Kind of thinking about how town admin will interact with this?
I'm a little foggy on who is expected to do what exactly.
And so that piece, so yes, because I think first of all, and I don't know the answer to this, like who owns the master plan update? The planning board, but who's the staff person that's working with the planning board?
The director.
The director, okay, so that's Leslie, so that's plus. So what I would imagine, if there's consensus of the board to kind of make this a priority in the coming year, is the conversation is, hey, you know, Leslie, we had our strategic planning meeting. This is something the board is interested in. I'm sure you're doing some community engagement as part of the master plan update. Let's understand what that is and have a conversation to ensure if we need to provide additional resources to create this type of conversation that you're interested in having, you do that and modify that contract or work plan so these community engagement processes can inform the master plan update. So I think it gets assigned that way.
Okay, can I just throw out there that the planning board has engaged a consultant, Judy Barrett.
Yep.
I believe she is going to be holding a series of public input sessions on the master plan. That's part of the work plan for the master plan. And I think the meeting that Brooke referenced between the chairs and vice chairs of the planning board, planning commission, and select board is intended to focus on the connections between the master plan and the select board strategic plan. And begin that alignment process. So some of this is in place already.
Some is, the question is it enough? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know if we know right at this exact moment, if there's enough, if there's not enough, if there, and how we're gonna figure that out.
Yeah, so I guess if this was, if the board decided today, yeah, let's make sure there's resources to do this, I would imagine that's the conversation that needs to happen. It's like, okay, here's what's in the scope. This is what we're planning to do. And then discern, does it accommodate what the board is interested in? Or do we need to add to that with additional resources that the town would provide to ensure that gets included in the work plan? So there's already some level of engagement anticipated. This perhaps is kind of leveling up with some additional community engagement meetings that are designed about more give and take. It sounds like more conversational as opposed to come and share your perspective and here's your, you know, here's the designs we want you to respond to, but just some give and take on potential solutions and how people might experience those, so those thoughts could get incorporated into the master plan. Am I saying that in a way that people are understanding it? And it makes sense to you? Okay. So that's where we would be. And again, if there's consensus on the board that this is something they want to pursue in addition to the other things that are underway. Does it make more sense now? Gives you a small headache, but
Yeah, it gives me
thanks.
that, but, like, I feel like there's a kind of a big step missing here, which is a discussion publicly between the select board and the planning board about the master plan and the strategic plan and these issues that Brooke is bringing
Yeah.
forward. Where's the community engagement? Where's the consensus on what the issues are and what the options are to deal with these issues? And how are we going to develop a consensus and not just what the problems are, but how they're going to be dealt with? We've all had anecdotal conversations with people about, you know, would you limit yourself to one car?
Yeah,
God, no, that's for other people to do.
right.
That's not for me to do. I mean, that's the kind of standard response. But even if everybody does limit themselves to one car, say, in a fantasy world, how are they gonna get around? Is our public transportation system sufficient for that? No. Quite obviously, it isn't. Are we willing to go there? Like, we've got years to go on something like that, but I'm just throwing it out as an example of, just like this gets really, kind of complicated quickly.
Yeah, so maybe the first step then is a joint meeting between the planning board and the select board to determine how the strategic plan elements are being cared for in the master plan and understand the level of community engagement, and then decide if we need to do
Yeah,
more.
and not just the strategic plan and the master plan, but the other way around, but both ways. How are select board priorities accommodated in the master plan? And how are master plan priorities approached in the,
Yeah, I mean, this is where you really have to reach back to the master plan, pull it in to operationalize it. It has to go both ways. Are these things that the board decides are priority, are they being accommodated as we plan for a new master plan? So that needs to go both directions. So Tom, and then I'll come back to Matt.
So thinking about these more long-range plans, something that we've talked a little bit about at select board is, as Libby's term, collision conundrum.
Oh, yeah, that was
Right,
last
so
year,
there's, last year, and there are all these very large capital projects coming up. And I think that, you know, there's this kind of thing in politics and government where kind of perception is everything. And a lot, as I said before, and it's quite obvious that a lot of these things are quite complicated and multi-layered, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that some people in the public perceive things that the town does and conflate it with, oh, well, rents are expensive on Nantucket. And yes, they all have to do with money and finance and fiscal situations, et cetera. But I think that something that we could do is possibly talk about at the board level about what we see is coming up in the next 3-5 years and how that ties into the master plan and comp plan and the longer range plans, and how open a discussion around, I don't know if it's through feedback like you're talking about, Brooke, in this, but just kind of prepare the public for that. A lot of these major things, and some things we are, of course, have to do because of MIPA regulations and the landfill, et cetera, solid waste, et cetera, that are coming. And I think that might be I'm just thinking out loud here, but I think that might be a decent place for us to start to kind of regularly prime the public for kind of what's coming. And I think we've done a really good job. The town and Drew's updates have been fantastic on DPW facility. I think the SMRT and the Dawn and her committee on OIH has been fantastic. And a lot of people look at those PDFs in our packets and things like that. I know those are a lot of work, but I think that goes a long way. That's all.
Yeah. So, yeah. I'm
Just
sorry.
real quick,
Yeah,
I'm back. Libby, traffic is a perfect example of what we should be. Because we've made some change, it's a perfect example because it affects everybody. It's, you know, it's summer people, it's people running businesses, everyone is impacted by it. It's knowable, you know, we know what's gonna happen, how many cars and how often and where it's gonna be. We've known it for 20 or 30 years. And so I think but it becomes, it's intractable because it's a hard thing to deal with and it's unpopular in some regards. So then we just sort of say, nothing we can do. Let's just round a couple corners and keep going. But I think that we have known for 20 or 30 years that it was gonna be really bad, and it's, you know, it's as bad as we thought and it's getting worse. And so I think everybody knows that. The question is how, if you have to, I think have to deal with that issue with, okay, here are some options. We're not gonna limit cars. Okay, here are some options. We have to make the other things better than getting in your car and how, you know, so we're trying to do that. But, you know, we have to figure out how do you do that more quickly and what will people coalesce around? And we have to also, there has to be a reason not to, you know, not to go downtown or not to, you know, go down, not to not go downtown, but there has to be a reason, disincentives. It can't just be all like, oh, this is wonderful, it's gonna be better. There have to be some disincentives. And you know, it should be more expensive to park where you know, where it's you know, it should be less expensive to park out here than it is downtown. Like downtown, you know, in those areas should be more. It should be free for an hour or two or three, and then it should start to ratchet up. You have to find a way, and plenty of places do this. And so I think that's a perfect example of something that we've kind of keep kicking the can down the road. Whereas I think if we actually did the work and had the options and had a you know, sort of a series of meetings in a well orchestrated, you know, sort of presentations and for input, we might be able to get somewhere on it. But I don't think that hasn't been what we've tried to do. You know, I think that hasn't been, our focus hasn't been to sort of get ahead of this and figure it out. In my opinion, I think the focus has been, you know, what can we kind of maybe do a little bit and, you know, instead of looking at the big picture. So my question, and that's a perfect example because it impacts everybody and it's a big picture that we all know. How do we get to the big picture and then work our way, you know, to that?
It's also a good example of how some of the things that have been a part of your strategic plan goals connect back to the master plan. So it is kind of that perfect conversation for these need to go both ways. The master plan needs to incorporate your all's priorities, and your all's priorities need to be fed from what's ultimately adopted in the master plan. Yes.
I just want to elaborate a tiny bit on what Matt was saying. I think one reason, there may be more, why nothing's been done, or a little here and there, but not anything big, is because the policymakers have not agreed on what to put forward. And that has to happen before any other stuff happens. I think we all have heard anecdotal stories about, like, I hear people say, yeah, the traffic's bad in July and August, but who cares? I just don't go downtown then. Or I alter my route or whatever. So there are workarounds that people do, and they don't really care if there's too many cars or that there's some traffic here and there in July and August. But jumping ahead to, there is a traffic problem and we should do something about it. And it's not just traffic, it's pollution and it's other things. In addition to the disincentives and the incentives, it has to be incredibly convenient for people to take things like public transportation. No one is gonna walk half a mile in February to wait 20 minutes for a bus to come along. It's gotta be, I mean, we need like 3 times more buses than we have now if we're gonna do something like that. And encourage carpooling. And I think Mike Burns has worked on a variety of ways for these incentives. We have bike week and we have this and that, but people aren't gonna ride their bikes in January. to get somewhere. Maybe if they have an electric bike that goes 40 miles an hour, like some of them seem to, but that's not a lot of people. That's not an 80-year-old.
Small comment there. So let me, just to make sure then, though, I mean, you're those kind of specific things, that's what has to come together, is the policymakers coming to consensus on what the policies should be that then dictate how you all operationalize it. So if we did these things, meet with the planning board, ensure alignment, assess the community engagement approach that's baked into the current work plan, and make sure that your all's desires for additional community, or I'll just say for robust community engagement, either are already being cared for, or you would add to that work plan, that would make sense as an approach to this conversation. And so, and I'm seeing a lot of heads nod, and so it seems like there would be consensus on adding this to the work plan for the coming year. I'm testing that.
I want to see it, this is idea number one.
Yes,
I want to see it in the context of other people's ideas.
okay, gotcha,
Before we say,
all right,
Yes.
so, but for now, it
I'm
seems,
assuming
yeah.
everybody is not agrees, you know, to begin with, like. if they're-
Everyone always does, isn't that how it works?
I see Malcolm
Okay.
going like this.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so with that as kind of the opener, then to this idea that, you know, what else is on your mind? Are there other emerging issues? And so this is where we, we balance, what are you doing? What else would you like to do? Is there anything up here that maybe we don't need to be doing because we're more interested in this other thing? So that's the conversation we want to have now. And I know there's been some kind of understanding of, we really need to stay the course because these take years. We know they do. We got to stay committed to them or they won't get done. But are there other emerging priorities that you all have that you'd like to share with your colleagues? Okay.
I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I have plenty, but I'm letting someone else speak.
I was gonna say,
Up
okay,
here.
then we're ready to go. No. All right, well, Matt, you want to fill the space?
Well, I think one of the things that we hear a lot about is improving enforcement across the board. And it's, you know, it's, we don't, it's for all various reasons, and so,
What kind of enforcement, just so I know?
oh, it's,
Like, is it code or is it, public safety?
it's everything.
It's everything.
It's everything. It's an across the board complaint is the, you know, that from the public is, and it's whether that's, you know, and some of it is, you know, some of it has improved, is improving, and we're doing pretty well on. I think, you know, I think the police this summer particularly have done a really good job of, you know, sort of slowing cars down and picking certain areas. This, I'm hearing good things from that. But I'm just talking in general, I think it's not a, it just seems that that's just a, we get a lot of stuff at town meeting. Town meeting is a barometer. If we're, people are trying to like govern because we're leaving a hole, we're leaving a place and they're not happy with it. So they try to write a town meeting article, or they try, you know, they browbeat us on a Wednesday night, et cetera. But, you know, but I think that's one of the things that just keeps coming up. You know, we've got issue of what's a, you know, here's a good one. What's a, you know, what is a commercial use? You know, if you have a house, can you have a party and you know, can you rent it every weekend, and can it have 350 people, and can it have multiple tents and 7 bars, and is that okay? You know, and why aren't you, people would be saying, why aren't you enforcing that? You know, like, that's not fair. Someone like myself owns a commercial property, it's grandfathered, but I couldn't do that. If I tried to do it, I'd be told no. Well, you know, so there's 2 issues. One is, you know, are we looking at it and enforcing it fairly in the way it should be? And this, you know, so that's one aspect of it. And then the second aspect is who's doing that? And are they doing it? You know, the public thinks, why aren't we doing it? And why are we letting this person get away with it and not someone else? And so there's that aspect, which is, you know, sort of with the short-term rental thing, some of these things are, you know, are decided by the building inspector or somebody else, and they make a decision and they follow one path. But we never, as a group, I'm worried that we never look and say, is that the decision we should be making? You know, do we agree with that decision and what is the impact on the town if we continue to, you know, follow that? And so somehow, I don't know, how do we align, you know, those sort of things that seem like somewhat innocuous that are not? How do we align that with us as the top, you know, as the top person? Because then we're in a situation where we're trying to, there's litigation and there's other stuff going on. We've got one hand tied behind our back because we, as a town, have chosen this one narrow path, which maybe we shouldn't have.
So I wrote this on the sticky note. You tell me if it's capturing it. So assess the capacity of the town to provide increased enforcement of town bylaws and regulations. And so in my head, what that means is, first of all, we document our existing service level. With the staffing that we have, this is what we can do. And very often, I would say, just from my experience in other communities, when I think code enforcement, zoning enforcement, it is almost always done on a complaint basis.
Yeah.
So that's where you end up with, unless somebody complains about the 7 bars and 5 tenths, it happens. And perhaps that also looks like to others as, well, why did you come to my house for the 7 bars and 5 tenths, but over here it didn't happen? But it is because you are staffed only to do these things
By complaint,
reactively
yeah.
by complaint. So understanding service level, and then you can have a conversation about, well, what service level do you want? And what does that cost? So would that be an accurate way of framing the sticky note?
Yeah, for the conversation, yeah.
For the conversation.
yeah.
Okay, Malcolm had his hand up and then.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Matt, I'm gonna talk about that particular issue tomorrow night, because the Board of Health attempted to look at it.
Yeah.
And I sense a lot of it is the way we're structured. I mean, we have a Board of Health, we have a zoning board, we have a planning board, we have. And I'm not sure how much power we really have over them to make decisions, other than we appoint some of them. And I agree, this is a major issue, we discuss it, and what I'm gonna say tomorrow night is that the Board of Health on that particular issue encouraged me to throw it to the select board.
Well, it always ends up here.
Yeah, but it ends up here, but what can we really do about it?
I know.
Because the zoning, we don't enforce the zoning laws. We don't enforce, this board doesn't. We don't enforce the fertilizer regulations, this board doesn't. It's too far away from us. I think this is a major issue, not of how the town is structured.
Okay,
There's like multiple, we have the planning board and the board they report to is almost a separate government.
I've heard,
It's very confusing to figure out how to get anything done.
yeah. Brooke?
Yeah, I mean, I think really the question is understanding authorities and where the authority to make these decisions rests. I mean, I can say I don't like that use of a property, but where in the bylaw is that use prohibited? It's one thing to say, I don't like it. It's another thing to say, people don't like short-term rentals, but we don't get to decide that. The voters decide that by amending the bylaw, and so far they haven't been unable to reach consensus to amend the bylaw in a way that's satisfactory to the 2/3 that we need to have that codified in a way that's enforceable. So, you know, kicking into the select board, to your point, where we don't, you know, where's the authority? We can maybe make recommendations about changes in the bylaw or say that's our goal. But then it has to go through the process of actually getting codified in a way that's enforceable. And I don't know that we can direct the building commissioner to make a decision in a certain way when he is tasked with interpreting the bylaw as it exists. I don't know where the line is
And then,
in terms of our authority here.
and then the
So-
staffing piece.
See, that to me is the real problem of the whole way this town is managed, because what I've learned in my time on the board is my friends, and I get emails and phone calls. The select board needs to do this, the select board has to do that, but we really can't. I mean, there's all these things we really can't do. And I sometimes think, what is our real purpose? What, we appoint people, We approve licenses. We decide if the road's gonna be closed or not. But when it gets to really important issues, we really don't have much say in it.
You recommend to town
And
meeting.
that's very frustrating to me.
Sure.
I think it's frustrating to the community too.
I'm gonna call on Tom and then Dawn. I've added to the sticky note and understand the authority to codify and enforce regulations. So that would be additive to the enforcement piece. Tom,
Oh, excellent.
okay,
Please.
Dawn first.
Oh, no, I mean, I was just gonna say, it's a good example of, something that we need to go back and look at exactly how the bylaw is structured. But in terms of, and then make a decision on, do we want to put limitations on having parties at private residences, and what does that look like? And how upset are certain people going to be when they now, because of something else that's happened, what are the unintended consequences of your annual cocktail party that you now can't have because you're limited to?
Well, I don't wanna discuss this in detail, but that's exactly where the discussion's gonna go, is you really can't regulate it. Because you decide, oh, are you gonna regulate a party of 350? Is 100 okay? Is 50 okay? Am I just gonna have a reception once a year? I mean, it's I don't wanna take the time now, but
Yeah.
it's an impossible, it's impossible.
It spirals.
It
all the
spirals.
different, and I think there's something in the bylaw that you can only have 3 tents a year on your property, I believe is what it actually says.
And that was to deal with the Tom Evers situation. That was, they were.
But then it's like, okay, so that was to deal with the so-called wedding house in Tom Nevers on the water. But the Dreamland has a giant event at a private residence.
So does Mariah Mitchell.
Mhm.
And the property we're talking about, he essentially built a permanent tent. So, I mean,
But
Okay.
but here's,
Move on.
but this
We've
is,
got
but
Tom and then Matt.
Sorry.
Sorry, Tom and then Matt.
Yeah, I completely get the sentiment here, but I feel like with some of these other boards, like, then run for planning board. Or run for HDC and try, or recruit candidates. And change it that way, like, I don't think we should be weighing in on other elected bodies' priorities, it's like HDC appeals, which we have one tomorrow night. Unless it's arbitrary and capricious, that they have their own standards, so to me, like, I think we have a lot on our plates through what our remit is. And so I just think that's something we should keep an eye, and plus, I don't think we should be readily overruling the building commissioner or town staff on things, because have somebody bring something to town meeting or bring it to the requisite board. I just don't, people are absolutely, of course, should email us and reach out to us and talk about it, and we can help them with a process, and that's why John does his meetings with citizen warrant articles and all that, so folks can have their articles written correctly. I think that's a good way. I give an example. Mary Bergman's article for the demo. That was such a great, she had an idea, she worked on it, she brought it to town meeting, and it passed by unanimous consent. And to me, that's how this should work. And the last thing I would say on heavy enforcement, to me, in the years I've been on Nantucket, which is not as many as many in this room, but I don't think that Nantucketers like heavy enforcement. And I just don't think that is in keeping. I mean, people do not come here so that somebody is going to tell them they are, that their bike is 6 inches from the post, or that's just not who we are. So I'd be very hesitant encroaching on that territory.
Thank you, Matt.
a lot of false dilemmas have been thrown out of, so that we won't do something. If we are not, and I understand how this works every time. If we as the top board aren't willing to see something and see that it's going to be an issue for the island. And if we aren't willing to take the bully pulpit and stand up and say, yeah, if we allow this to continue unabated at this, at this level, and, and these places become de facto event centers, and if every home on the island can have as many people as can stand on it, and become a de facto event center, that, you know, we can't stand up and see there's a problem with that, even though people might make a lot of money for a while until the whole thing implodes. And then we'll all lose. If we can, as a board, do that, then who can? You know, and so this is, you know, and I think that we give up our responsibility, that we're being elected for, when we say there's nothing we can do, and it's up to those boards, and if the public are angry about something, they can bring something to town meeting. And then they bring it to town meeting and we complain, because they're bringing it to town meeting and they're interfering. You know, so I really, if we can't deal with this, you know, I don't know who can.
Okay.
So anyhow.
So just to be clear, I'm not saying we can't deal with it. I'm saying we need to be clear what we have the authority to deal with now and what we should prioritize in terms of change. And, you know, in this situation, we're dealing with one property that has been deemed problematic in one neighborhood, right? Do we throw a grenade at, you know, we crafted a bylaw to address a property in Tom Nevers, right? It was a specific example and we changed the bylaw for a specific example. If we're gonna do this, we do need to have a conversation about what are the unintended consequences of doing that. Because one situation does not a policy drive, but you're right in terms of, sorry, I'm pointing. You're right in terms of it's healthy to have the conversation of what does this portend for the future and should we address it now? And I'm not opposed to that, but I also don't want the community thinking that we can just decide things that we don't have the authority to decide. That is, so many people say the select board should do this and the select board should do that. They don't understand how government works. Why hasn't the select board solved short-term rentals? Well, if you haven't been paying attention, the voters haven't solved short-term rentals, right? Not for lack of trying on this board's part. Sometimes you can't get anywhere. So there's a balance between ignoring it and giving the impression that we have the authority now to do something about certain things. And I think, so I'm sort of agreeing with everybody at the same time. And then we have to decide what are the conversations we want to have? What are the ones that rise to utilizing our time on Wednesday nights to think about these longer term policy questions. We should be doing it. Not license by license, not permit by permit, but and one of the reasons we did the licensing meetings is to free up more time, hopefully, for these conversations. We got lost this summer. I want to get back on track on that.
I don't wanna, get all mired in this, but these sort of couple of circumstances that have arisen here have been addressed at the staff level. Brought to, in the situation that we're talking about with the event, I put together a group that involved Malcolm. And we had a discussion with town council about what are the town's options for this. The immediate, easy, that's not the right word, but the most straightforward option is to have a Board of Health regulation. Evidently, that's not what the Board of Health wants to do. So there could be another option where the select board puts forward a general bylaw amendment, or perhaps it's a zoning bylaw amendment. So if that discussion comes to the board as a policymakers needs to make a decision. And like you said, there's going to be a myriad of unintended consequences and spiraling and all of that. That's how this goes. The Turo situation, that came to the board. There was a bylaw proposed. We initially heard from town council that there wasn't very much you could do about it. There's a state law situation, and the local authority was not incredibly strong, and we also didn't have staffing to nail down every single Turo rental that is out there. And that is never gonna happen, but the proposal that we put forward, which I think everybody, the board, was a board article, it didn't get acted on. So now we're back to try to tweak it and bring it back, but things are happening, but the bottom line is the board needs to have a consensus about how it's going to, what it's gonna put forward. And then town meeting decides, approves it or not.
All right, I think a good conversation. I feel like we framed it in a way that accommodates the conversation and you all can decide if it's a priority. There might be some additional ones. I feel like I need to offer you an opportunity to adjust your fluid levels. Quick break.
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll take 7 minutes and we'll come back and then. Okay, perfect.
Well, the knit shop's talking about this whole, the whole thing.
What's that?
The knit shop women are talking and there are groups being formed now, buying large properties to do the same thing. I know groups of movers and shakers are buying like this town, this property and that property. Cause we've made a decision as a town that this is an allowed use and we've followed, followed that decision and it's an allowed use. So now they want to do it. And I'm saying, what are we doing?
Well, actually, the town council says that Board of Health we could have done it through short-term rental regulations, because he claims that's a short-term rental. But then what if it's not a short-term rental?
So here's what's wrong with, have you read the two letters from the two lawyers on that?
Which ones?
There was one lawyer from Jamie's, there was one letter from Jamie's
Yeah.
lawyer, there was another letter from the people.
Yes, I read the book, yeah.
Yeah, we followed. Anyway, it's just maddening because
And then,
what the solutions we're always given is not a solution, it's something we know isn't gonna lead to anything. And,
there's no solution.
well, there is, and
But
sometimes,
But a lot of people that have how do you define how many people you can have at a party? We're gonna have to do that. Island wine, not just through short-term rentals, because that eliminates all the others. He claimed it was a short-term rental. So he could do that as a short-term rental, but if it's not a short-term rental. I mean, you can do it.
here's the question then, if I take something natural and I turn it into a residence. Can I then start renting it out short-term and have people have events there every day with liquor and bars and, everything else? Can I do that
Good.
legally?
There's a precedence for it.
Well, I don't want that precedent. That would be the dumbest idea ever. And following that would be the dumbest thing to follow. That's why I'm saying, like, what are we thinking of?
I agree with this, but is this a health issue?
No, I think they dump it at the health department because no one else wants to deal with it.
It's not a health
Yeah.
issue. I mean, the board was very clear that they were sympathetic to it.
Yeah.
But they did not see it as a health issue.
Well, no one sees it as their issue. That's the
whole point of it.
That's the
That's
problem.
what I was trying to express.
I know.
But that's why it's gonna come to you.
No, I know. I'm trying to bring it back and I'm trying to bring it up.
It's
And-
gonna come up.
Yeah, I know.
The board asked me to go back to the select board and mention that it's a problem that we don't think is a health issue.
But but that's how we left it.
Yeah.
When we had that meeting
Yeah.
with town council, it was generally agreed in my observation.
Yeah.
That the easiest and first step was, let's see if the Board of Health will agree it's a health issue. If it's a nuisance, it's a disturbance, there are.
Right.
Board of Health has the purview to establish regulations that address nuisances.
Yes.
Is
Right.
this a nuisance? My personal opinion is, of course it is.
Yes.
But if failing the Board of Health opinion, or respecting the Board of Health's opinion, then it needs to go to the select board. But I think the answer is a bylaw, a general bylaw that says.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing would be to, instead of siding and saying something's legal, then we have to undo that. The first thing is to try to,
Well, you don't undo it, the zoning board of appeals will. undo it.
whoever, yeah, someone has to undo
But
it.
that's the system that we have. The
I
building
understand.
commissioner makes a,
This
determination.
Yeah.
and I'm surprised somebody hasn't appealed it yet. Maybe they have.
Oh, I think they will.
Yeah, I don't remember how much time they have, but
There were two, it was two letters. There was one letter from them and one letter from James. That I read.
Yeah. I don't know if I've seen an appeal.
I don't think there's an appeal letter. Okay.
So
I'm
maybe
seeing.
that's pending.
That's the plan.
And so then the ZBA will make the determination, but that doesn't have, the select board can still start working on a general bylaw.
And so what also what I'm.
Yes, exactly.
So, you know, this, the whole community engagement,
Still on, just like.
yeah, the whole community engagement piece for me is how, can we take the temperature beyond the people who have enough interest in a topic to speak about it, to assess what's worth spending time on? I don't know.
Yeah, that Julia can probably talk about that, but that is probably notoriously difficult in municipalities because of the participation in
Who responds?
surveys and, you know, people don't go to stuff. They don't go to forums, they don't go to informational sessions unless they definitively know it is going to affect them personally.
Their ox is being gored.
Exactly. And they have to be somehow told that. Otherwise, they're not gonna pay attention to it, and then they get to town meeting and say, oh, I had no idea this is going on.
So we advertise
Well-
public forums and your property rights are about to be taken away.
You,
Right,
you, Brookmore.
Matt
your
wants to
property.
take away your car again.
Yeah.
yeah, those kinds of things, that attracts a crowd.
That gets them out.
It was interesting to me, in this, the little pulse survey, when people said, what else is important to you, you know? And not one person mentioned PFAS.
Yes,
It's a great example because there's the, you know, so many people are talking about, caring about PFAS, and is it just that the people you hear from, you know, do they represent others, or are they the people? And that's what you don't know on any given issue.
yeah, that is.
So maybe my idea of engagement is a pipe dream.
Well,
Well, I
it's not,
think
it's not a pipe dream. I mean,
It's hard to do.
it's hard to do, and you
Yeah.
kind of need, like we've been to any number of mass manager or ICMA webinars and workshops and things about community engagement. It is hard.
Yeah.
when we do community engagement for, as part of bigger like strategic planning projects, one of the things that we found is, yes, we can have a meeting and we can say, y'all come, and it can be online and it can be in person, and we might get 100 people, and that's awesome. What's really amazing is when we instead train and deploy people to go to meetings that are already happening and ask for 20 minutes on an agenda. And if you really want to engage people, you go to where they're already meeting and, you know, ask to be part of the conversation, whether it's a civic group or a church or a, you know, professional association or anything. There's meetings all the time, right?
Yeah.
And that was a way of just getting the general public informed about, maybe caring about, and perhaps engaged in those other things.
Yeah.
So those are things people are trying. I mean, they tried that in Shrewsbury. They did that in Westboro, sorry, Westboro. But it's a huge lift, you know? It's a huge lift.
And you almost need a whole section engaged in just doing that.
Right.
And we need a whole planning department that has that whole section that's tied to, you know, that's tied to us. It's tied to Libby and tied to that. part.
Or we just had a discussion about this yesterday, our communications division, which is already a part of town administration, they need more staff.
Yeah,
And
like a
we,
community engagement officer.
right, and more larger municipalities, I think, are starting to have community engagement.
Yeah.
Directors, officers, whatever
Yeah.
you're gonna call them. And they might be called something else too, but that's basically what they do.
Yeah.
But somebody has to focus on that and that alone. It's huge.
Because now we're putting out information, but we're not having dialogue as much, right? And that's, I think, what people are yearning for, is someone nodding at them saying, I hear you, you know?
Yes, and again, and I said this at last year. The hearing and the listening and all that is important. And a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, there are times when people don't hear what they want to hear because it is not structured like that.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
allowed like that, or they didn't like a decision that was made. That doesn't mean they weren't heard.
Exactly, right. Not being heard is not the same thing as getting what you want, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
All right, so we're back. Tom.
When you went to MMA on the strategic planning thing, that's interesting. The 3 towns you mentioned are all select board open town meeting.
Oh, really?
Well,
Lexington's
Brookline.
Oh,
is
Brookline is
represented,
represented,
but
yeah.
Lexington.
That's just interesting.
Oh, yeah,
Lexington-
Lexington-
With their
represented.
size,
Yeah.
and none of them is town or city council.
Oh, yeah, no.
Lexington's what, 30,000, but they have, they're 199 elected town meeting members. Okay, so we're back and we've got 2 sticky notes that in and of themselves feel like a very potentially significant things that you all would engage in. In part because you have to, when you would decide to make something a priority, the way that you have to make it work with all the committees is in itself an effort. And so I think they're written in such a way that captures that. Are there other things you would want your colleagues to consider today as we think about the strategic plan and your all's priorities for the coming year? All right,
Expand the parking district. That's something we'll probably have to do before this summer.
so
Lane just expanded. We're having a lot of complaints from the edges that are all being impacted now with cars there long-term or other people. I think that that's something we can just do as a board. We can get input from, from Drew and from Mike, but I think that's something that we should be considering.
So look at expanding the parking district. This is downtown.
Yeah, down there parking, yeah.
So Matt, so what you mean by that is just having limited time parking in a broader area?
Broader area, yeah, because if you don't have it, then cars can park as long as they want. Then there's a 96-hour rule, but we don't really enforce it. If we do, if it's brought to someone's attention. But when we're really busy, it's hard to do it. There's a car on Cliff Road that's been there all summer. The tires are flat and they've taken the licenses off. It's probably abandoned. And there was, a guy there that had 4 or 5 of them. And I was getting that complaint from someone. There was another person complaining about down at Grant Point. And so we have to sort of look and say, where else should we broaden this to make it work better?
Can I add? I think that in addition, we really need to get a conversation going with New England Development about some kind of enforcement at the downtown stop parking lot. It's really like egregious what people do. They park there and leave for the weekend. Like, it's become really out of hand.
Just to remind you, we've asked them twice.
Yeah.
We've offered very specifically to do the enforcement for them. No, thank you.
I think they're afraid of public opinions. Should get really clear.
They have a chapter 91 license that allows that as public. We could try to tweak it from that perspective of like allowing people to park there for, 2 weeks on end isn't public parking. So we could make an effort if we wanted to.
Yeah, I mean.
We may not get anywhere. I agree with you,
Just
but they might just
enforce
ignore us.
overnight parking, it
Yeah.
would make a huge difference.
Okay,
That's a good one.
Expanding the parking district strikes me as putting a Band-Aid on a problem, because what will now happen is, great, near in Cliff Road, people won't be able to do it. They won't be able, but you just push them further off Cliff Road.
Oh.
They're gonna park somewhere.
Yep, exactly.
So don't push them off Cliff Road first.
Personal point of-
The last time we did it was Sunset Hill. And the reason we did is that people were renting their houses, and in order to rent their houses, they can't rent their house with a car in the driveway. So that when they would go for like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they would park it in front of their neighbor's house on Sunset Hill, and there was nowhere for the buses to park to go see the oldest house. So we expanded it past Sunset Hill to the end of that, just to North Liberty Street. Westchester and, down Westchester and North Liberty was the last expansion and that solved that issue there.
It's without the issue there, though.
It doesn't, and it pushed it,
Created
yeah,
problems.
pushed it to Lincoln Circle, it pushed it to further down the street, but so anyway, we have to talk about it, at some point.
But do you get it far enough that it's too inconvenient to walk to the boat? And leave your car, like, that it's more convenient to pay for an Uber than.
Yeah.
You're far enough out that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Walking to the boat.
Well, there's
from
a
there is
lot of
just too
people,
far.
cause I'm up early and around that part of the island, I'm not around the other part as much, but. There, when you get up in the middle of the night, there's parking everywhere, and they come in, starting at like 6 or 7 in the morning and they fill up all the way out. And then they're there all day and then they leave again. And when we've studied this, so we have all the numbers on the list, so this is a long-term daily parking and a long-term parking forever issue. If you just had turnover of those, we wouldn't even have to deal with any of this. So, so you're right, and people will park further away and they'll take the bus in one way and walk back, or they'll walk to town and then they'll take the bus back at night. So people are doing it halfway, finding a place to put their car.
Okay, is there anything else I should make a sticky note for? Got 4 up there now. Okay. What I wanna do 2 things. One is kind of make sure there's nothing, there needs to be some consensus of this group that these are things you wanna add to the list. And then I think we ought to understand if there's anything we need to, or maybe there's things you want to take off the underway list and say, yeah, let's do this other thing instead. Sometimes we want something that's really big and we don't do something that's really small. So, it's an unequal distribution, but this is imperfect. So, just testing this, anyone, if you kind of would prefer not to have this conversation about the master plan and community engagement. Anybody, that's not something they want to do? I'm doing it by negative, like the.
I think it's a good idea. I think to Libby's comments and what we talked about before, having the conversation with or Judy and the planning, like that is a really good starting off point.
Yep.
She is excellent, and her process around the year-round deed restriction program for the trust. She held all those focus group. I know everyone knows this, but and she was perfect for that. So I think that's great.
Okay. What about the enforcement piece, kind of understanding your all's authority to codify and enforce regulations and looking at your capacity to do enforcement? Keep it on the list?
I think maybe the way I would describe it is when one of us feels like there's something we should be doing more of, that it should come to the chairs and a request to agenda it or not as a topic. Do we support change, and then have that conversation about whether we want to take it on. It's a big thing to try to do it globally. It feels more like
One at a
issue by issue. Matt, what do you think?
I'm not sure how to get to it. I feel like it's I feel it's kind of baked into our culture now. And so getting it out of the culture, like everyone said, oh yeah, we don't like enforcement. But, we all agree to that. Oh yeah, we don't want to be enforced. But that, the corollary of that means that, a lot of stuff we don't like can happen and nothing happens about it. And a lot of negative things can happen and, oh, well, nothing we can do. And so I'm not sure how to change it. I just think it's just something I hear all the time.
Well, it seems to me if we do it on a topic by topic basis and have it in a public meeting, we're gonna hear from people whether they want it or not.
I don't have the answer. I just know I'm just bringing the topic up.
The only problem with public meetings and input is we usually get the same people. There's 100 or 200 people that really speak, and the only ones that ever speak. I want to get to those other people somehow. I want to get to the people that don't send me emails or call me or go to meetings. I'd love to hear what they're thinking.
They're thinking it's not a problem because they're not saying anything. Or it's not enough of a problem to say something.
Yeah.
So if I this is what I would do, given what Brooke said, I would take these sticky notes off, and you all would just deal with it one-on-one, one-off, when, and if it comes to you, when it gets brought to you, so it sounds like you're gonna get one from the Board of Health, and you can decide what you wanna do with it. But, and so I would take it off of this as a global thing of let's assess the whole thing, let's just deal with the problems when they come to you.
And I would say, Matt, this joint meeting with the NPDVC and the planning board around, areas of common interest, I think enforcement may be something that's a part of that, right? Because we're talking about planning, code enforcement.
No, I'm fine taking it off. I just think it's important for us to acknowledge that that half the government, it's what half the citizens are complaining fairly vociferously about. And so I just think I don't want to ignore it. I'm fine taking it off.
All right, what about the parking items, looking at expanding the downtown parking district, sounds like that's something within your control. Something you want on the list this year? Yes,
Libby, I saw that you had on your notes for your town manager's report or
Yeah.
something for town meeting, like it said reconstitute parking commission or something like that.
Oh, that was in the silver sheet.
So-
There's a whole list of stuff to address at some point. So the parking commission has been discussed off and on, and at one point, we sort of had said, the board had said, let's wait until we have a parking,
Coordinator was.
coordinator. That is not happening anymore because we weren't able to hire anybody into that position. So, I guess this is gonna be another discussion I'm just sort of talking out loud here. It could be another discussion at the board level as to what would a parking commission do exactly? And is it gonna require more staff and which it will require something more because meetings will have to be posted, rooms reserved, minutes taken, all of that. The stuff that people sort of say, oh, yeah, all that. Well, it takes a lot of time. But that's what it was, it has been discussed off and on by the board.
And it's been voted and it was some of this like downtown parking was voted and some of this has been voted and taken away or voted and just hasn't been implemented for various reasons. Is how I view it, but
so it stays? Tom? Good,
To be clear, are these the two issues that were brought up? One expand the,
Expanding and then
parking district?
downtown, yep, and the New England development for the downtown stop shop lot, those two.
Sure.
All right, so they don't sound like as big of lifts as perhaps some of the others, like the other one on engagement would remain. Okay. So, quick pulse of town admin, kind of one big item perhaps, depending on how that conversation goes. Are you comfortable adding it and figuring out how to put it in the work plan? Do we need to take something, we need to look at what's there or to take anything off?
I think the answer is yes, but just to review it, but I'll let those guys go, because this was dragging on, so they're not like, so Drew to talk about transportation, I mean,
No, they,
they wanted to be here for it, but.
I mean, just to look at them quickly, add public engagement. I'm not quite sure what we mean, but we'll flesh that out as,
In that
as,
meeting, yeah.
in the work plan meeting. And then bring it back to the board. Yes, that's fine, because we
That's fine.
actually already are discussing internally the addition of additional staff resources in communications. So that's something. The enforcement the enforcement, we're gonna do that differently. The two parking issues, I mean, that's not a
No.
gigantic heavy lift
So it's
by
Okay.
I
us.
think it's more us.
It's more,
Easier than right wheels or.
yeah, it is, because it's
or
quite specific.
wheels,
The parking expansion thing, that'll eventually require a map.
Yeah.
Adjustment and a public hearing and that sort of thing. The downtown stop and shop lot, I guess we can again
Mhm.
ask New England Development.
Chapter 91 angle.
well, we have to figure out what is our angle, what is our leverage to
Yeah.
make the ask again,
Right.
but. And so there's a little work. Yeah, here's an idea for the sort of the sort of engagement part, is some of this maybe should be getting done through NPDDC. They meet monthly, You know, there may be, maybe it's a, you know, maybe when we talk to them, it's a, you know, a section or, you know, or a section of a section that is, you know, that is notified and advertised online and and it's dealt with there. You know, so there may be,
Yeah.
this may not be a,
Which is why I think that conversation's so
Yeah,
important
it
to
is.
how you started, yeah.
because that's, you know, I'm going back to when I first got involved in government, that's where that's the place where that happened.
Mhm.
Over time, that has been happening less and less. Maybe we can bring it back there. You know, that's kind of,
Okay. Well, then it seems like we're okay, that we'll kind of integrate these things into the work plans. They'll be part of the strategies and tactics that you all are updated on, that they align with the strategic plan. And my sense is there's a solid commitment to these 5 areas. We wanted to just share with you very briefly. Sheila, would you put up that, the start of that presentation? I mentioned that as part of, I'll call it like an experiment of how the Zen City platform can work and what you all, the capabilities that it might have. Greg and Florencia did what they call a pulse survey that gives you a statistically valid sample. But is this, you know, a small sample size, but still significant. And I wanted Greg to just kind of very high level share with you what the results were when people were asked about your 5 areas of focus. So Greg?
Thanks. Well, Julie already led into it. It was town administration through the comms office. You guys know Zen City, and part of their contract has a module called Pulse, and it's surveys that can go into the community. And the way they do it is it's not from the town, it's through paid ads. So it's mostly through social media in different languages that target the community based on geocode. And they try to compare it to the census. There's a lot more to the methodology, which you'll all receive. We just looked at it yesterday. And so there are 748 responses over the 6 weeks, which makes it, I guess, responsive and significant. And we did this in order to not only test Zen City, but is to gauge the alignment of the select board's strategic plan with community opinion. So it was as much as a test for us with Zen City, as well as getting it out there to see, one, if the public even knows or is aware of a strategic plan, and if they are, or even if they weren't, are the goals in line? And be happy to know that, and at the upper level, that our focus areas really are in line with what the community was saying. So without the 2 highest being housing and sustainability. So those were like the lion's share. And there are like subsets to each of those categories that have what they meant by sustainability or housing, whether it's, I want to own my own house, or the town should help us, find affordable renting and things like that. So there are subsets in that, but is it UC though? Yeah. So I mean, the survey, the report, if you go to the next slide.
Yes,
Thank you.
right.
Oh, is that working?
There you go.
We haven't broken down. So, this is just one example. Affordable housing did overall come out to be the number 1. And then they have these different categories, which you can't see. I
Yeah,
apologize.
and we could not get, this came straight from, as a PDF from Zen City,
Yeah, it's
so
just-
we're apologize. The graphics aren't great, but just hear the message that Greg is saying.
Right, and we'll get you all the information too, but and so like I said, there's subcategories, but just for your benefit, the overall was housing, so we're on track with that. The second in line was sustainability and, oh, I'm sorry, well, it was sustainability, but we're going down each
Down the
focus
list.
areas, and transportation also ranged high. Most felt that there was some decent transportation on the island. But at a higher level, saying it's important to improve it for sustainability of the island for themselves. So, and bearing in mind, this went out in Spanish, English, Portuguese, like the targeted ads. So we're trying to get as much of the community as possible. And so you can't see them, but those are like the areas that they're talking about how to improve it. But it also includes parking and parking management, not just buses and things, but also includes the ferries, which people don't understand. We don't own the ferries, but they talk about affordability to get on and off island and things like that. Next, I believe is,
Just a quick question, do you know of the 700, you know what percent came back from various ethnicities or areas?
yes.
Okay, that's
Yep.
cool, all right.
Yep. Which, so like I said, there is like an actual report that you're all gonna get, we just looked at it yesterday. Sheila, and, I mean, really just kind of going through them, but they're not as relevant just because you can't really see them, but, it's trying. So rental leadership, you can see 92%, that is up there, and it had a really broad array of what the responses came back out of the sustainability and environmental leadership. So we're covering it in our focus area, but there are some other dynamic aspects of it that may be able to be folded in. But overall, we're on the right track with environmental leadership as one of our focus areas. Well, next, thank you. This one got middle ground. When they're talking about in, you know, efficiencies and so forth, a lot of it came into roadways and bike paths. They weren't really talking about the actual government operations of like how quickly permits are turned around or things like that, but it was, it also talked about like, you know, housing as part of it again, they cross paths. So this one was good, so we're on the right track. This one was pretty high up there, but again, they had a different view of it. Zero. Health environment community, that was a tough one because it came back with a bunch of different things. And they weren't necessarily focused in on our focus area with DEI or helping provide health and human services. It did come back with some useful information that ranged from Parks and Rec and community centers and things like that. So there's information in there that's relevant that we can mine out of it. But overall, we're on the right path, at least having a focus area on it because it came back very high. That is very, very, even if it said, that's kind of wrong. It says, Florencia typed these really quickly. It said to be environmentally sustainable. It actually meant to be healthy environment community, sustainable.
Yeah, and the different percentages, one is saying, yes, we think it's important, so that's the bigger number, and the other is the overall, like, yeah, you're doing it.
50%,
So it's like, so it's like, you do more of this, we definitely want it, and you're on the right track.
You're doing a good job, but it's not it's a priority for us, but you're doing a better job than we're saying. And then the last, of course, would be, oh, well, housing. Did we skip housing in this one?
No, we saw in the beginning.
Oh, we just started in the beginning, was number one. So here's other areas that came in, like when they asked, well, what are we missing? Like, you know, what other areas of importance, what could there be? Overall, they could all be incorporated into our 5 focus areas for the most part. So we're on the right path, which is great. You know, there's a lot of like Parks and Rec type stuff in there and otherwise, but nothing that really like jumped out at us as, gee, we're not capturing that somewhere in our 5 focus areas. So it was encouraging altogether. It was a good first test for a plus survey, pulse per survey. And, you know, we have another one to go, so we can use it. So we thought at least it was helping to inform us and the board that we're on the right path. I think that's kind of the message.
Yeah, to me, the overall message is these 5 things are important to the community. You are appropriately representing those values in the work that you're doing. And when you ask me, what else do I care about? They all fit in these buckets somehow. And so that's also, I think, a really good sign that you have a place to care for the priority needs of the community.
And there were areas that you can just type in comments.
Yes.
There was enough about development, you know, stop the development, too much development, that type of stuff. So it doesn't really fit in, but the comments were there. And some like, you know, focus on us, don't focus on the tourists. Those type of comments, but also some very good comments of, you're doing a great job. You know, like there's a lot going on and you're doing a good job, but maybe a little more in housing. Like they were very thoughtful with it.
Okay. So, my sense is, you know, onward, the plan's making sense, so I think we can keep going there, CLO. That's just the overall, the principles of sustainability that guide you and the 5 outcomes. Go ahead. And so what I wanted to kind of just mention, things I've mentioned to you before, but we talk about the things that get done, and there's a lot of things that are happening and there's more you want. They sit at that intersection of political sustainability and administrative, political acceptability, what you all want to do, and administrative sustainability, what there's the capacity of the organization to do. And these types of conversations and the work that you all do ultimately bridge that gap that can exist between those two things, where you find out, you know, what are the resource needs that you have? How are you going to accommodate this going forward? Next slide. Go ahead. And it just leads back into the roles. So, you know, we've got this, this chart that I know you've seen before, and I've handed it out to you many years. It's also from the late 1900s. Jim Sparrow's work from the 1980s, but it's timeless in terms of what it means for us. But it's just about the role of the board is really focused on that, you know, the long-term vision and the policy that guides the organization. And the organization is focused on management and administration. And you all have a pathways that you connect in very important ways to help town admin get some of these initiatives done, whether it's RLM home or the work you're doing on crack and all the other committees of the short-term housing. I can't name all the things that you all do that support the town's initiatives, but I just want to give you some space maybe to talk about how this is working, or if there's any adjustments you need in terms of staff interactions, board contacting staff, things like that going forward as you focus on implementation for the coming year. Working, Libby? You know, we've been tuning this over the years. When I think about what this strategic plan implementation looked like in the very first years that we did it and where it is now, it is just,
It's night and day.
it is amazing. It
Yeah.
really is.
I mean, I think, I don't know if we're meaning to get too deep into this, because we do talk about it annually at the governance meeting. But,
Yeah.
the board's role by charter is policy.
Yeah.
Related, and staff carries out the policies set by the board, and our charter has more specifics about interactions between the select board and staff, which is not what's supposed to be happening without communication with the manager.
Right.
I think people are generally pretty good about that. Sometimes there's a little slippage, and if there is, I think people let me know after, sometimes rather than before, but I think for the most part, it's fairly harmless. The only thing that people should be cautioned about is that often staff will hear from a board member and think that is what they are now supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
When really it might have been just a casual, hey, we really ought to think about doing X, Y, Z, but they take it to mean, I better start on that right now.
Yeah, you all have an outsized level of importance to the staff than you ever realize, and that's just important to remember, because we think we're just us, so. Okay, good. Next slide.
I
Yeah.
reported you as someone badgering me to do what.
Badgering you to
HR.
All right, so,
Deleted all those emails.
again, you know, one of the things that I've really appreciated being able to witness is the engagement of the organization, kind of really deepening its commitment to the strategic framework. When we do these things, these strategic planning exercises, you know, we talk about different elements of the plan. Your all's vision has been largely captured in this commitment to sustainability and that statement. And then your focus areas really are the big buckets of the things that must go well to achieve the vision that you have for the community. What we hadn't done until this year was fill in the blank on mission and values. And so I think it was Greg came back from that very conference, he was mentioning, saying, you know, we're doing such a good job, but this is missing. We haven't done it yet. And I was thrilled to kind of see the interest in engaging employees in doing this. So earlier this year, we did a survey of town employees and we asked them for their input on mission and values. You know, everyone who does this work has their own biases of how they like it to roll out, but I like to see employees own the mission and values. Because the mission is really why they get out of bed every day and come to work. It's really their call to service to the community. And values, the way we ask the question is when your colleagues are at their best, what values are they demonstrating? So it's really taking the good things about the culture of the organization and kind of monumenting it, making a monument out of it and saying, this is what we expect. So when new people join the organization, they understand the call to service and they understand the values that they hope to embody as they work in service to the community. So we went through a process with the survey, got a lot of input, and we had a workshop with cabinet, and that's another aside that I will say, I've seen the cabinet grow and evolve and just how they collaborate and work together and kind of all in on the strategic plan, but also seeing them all in for each other. There's no invisible hierarchy of a more important cabinet member than another. It really is a group of colleagues that are working incredibly well together. And they engaged fully in this process to develop the mission statement and articulating those organizational values. So next slide, and did we decide, is Rick gonna share this? Rick got assigned extra work because we kind of were in a spot where so mission, role and purpose of government and the values, I always say they exist, whether we write them down or not, we know they're there, and that's why we ask it the way we do. So what we're really looking for from the board is kind of your enthusiasm, I think, in many ways, to that this makes sense to you, that this aligns with how you imagine town employees, your neighbors, serving this community and the values that you hope they bring to the work that they do. So drum roll, Rick.
Is there another slide or not?
You didn't remember it?
Of course I got it.
Oh, okay, there it
But
is.
as long as you have it there, I want everybody.
Yeah, whatever, see it, good.
I guess what I just add to that is, so the survey I thought was kind of interesting because what it did is it would group adjectives for certain types of values, and I'm just gonna make one of them. It'd be collaborate, which of these best expresses how you feel about town? Spirit of collaboration, spirit of collegiality, spirit of teamwork. And then you had to choose from those words, and then they would appear later down in different groupings in the summary and in the survey. And I think ultimately, and I'm not positive this is how it works, but we essentially narrow down words so that you get, you actually get to teamwork as opposed to collaboration, because teamwork must mean something more to the groups of people that are there. And so we ended up with the values below, which are customer service, compassion, integrity, accountability, and stewardship. And as I watched the groups kind of work, everybody, person or group had sort of the ones that were their pet values. I know in our group, it was compassion and integrity. In other groups, it was other things.
Stewardship.
Was that yours too?
We were stewardship and.
Oh, stewardship, yeah. So, and then, we went through this process where each group wrote down their own mission statement, and some groups were concise and some groups were quite wordy. And we were trying to get it down to something that was, a couple sentences. Well, I think our group was trying to get it down to a couple sentences, maybe 35 words,
Other
you know,
groups wanted a paragraph.
and not listing every aspect of what, of everything that's important to us. And so, and we got to a point where, after about an hour of discussion, we were still sort of a little bit at odds. So we just decided to park it, and then Jody and Rick got the extra work assignment, and we.
They were at opposite ends of not of the wordiness spectrum, but there were a few key phrases that people were kind of, oh, I really like this, but I really like this. And so they worked it out in a follow-up session to get to.
We strive to provide high-quality public service with compassion. Integrity, sorry, I'm trying to read both, and accountability as stewards of our cherished island, which was a really important concept that people wanted, that we are stewards. We are committed to cultivating a connected community where everyone feels welcome. We debated the welcome part for a long time with where everyone feels at home, and then we decided that yeah, welcome was better. And so we just iterated through it and that's what we came up with. And I think, we shared it with, cabinet and people thought it was pretty good. So.
Yeah, they shared it with cabinet, kind of the follow-up work, shared it with cabinet yesterday, and they were all in on having this shared with you all today. So how does it land with you? Does it sound like what you hope the town employees are thinking about as they carry out their duties?
Yes.
You know, in the survey, they really made the point of, we live here too, you know, that we're serving our neighbors, we care about this community. I mean, it was really, I will say, heartwarming to read it, read those responses and kind of see the passion that they have for all of this in answering a survey that came out to them.
Your point about folks living here,
Yeah,
this is like the thing that is so unique about Nantucket on so many levels. In terms of the intersection of people with such disparate levels of means and that we all see each other at the grocery store, we all see each other around town, we all see each other, and that fosters something really unique. And I think this really captures that sentiment that people, that I try to explain when people ask me what it's like to live here. So.
I think when we go to the managers conferences and maybe you ask them, well, do you live in the town that, you know, you're the manager? They say, oh, God, no, you know.
Right.
I can't afford that.
Or I don't want to, because I don't want to
Be
see.
able to go out
Yeah.
to a restaurant, you know.
yeah. Well, you know, serendipity is that there's gonna be some towns have appreciation event coming up in November. And so the rollout of really weaving this into the lexicon of the organization and how people talk about why they come to work and what the values are, can really begin with that. So, I'm glad to see your response. Felt like they did really solid work. So, yeah. Awesome.
Thanks.
What is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg, you're very intelligent.
I wrote the whole thing.
I know. I'm very impressed.
Are you saying surprisingly?
Yeah, way.
I
Is
think.
that implied?
Yeah.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
I don't want to catch that part.
So we're kind of nearing the finish line here, a little bit on the early side, which people always hate it when we finish meetings early, so I'm apologizing already for that. But did you have a hand, were you trying to throw your hand up?
I was gonna say, I would really love to go to the boards and look at the
And just
sticky
look at the
notes.
sticky notes, yeah, let's do
And
that.
just see like.
Remember
what-
it, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, let's do it.
you guys mind?
Yeah,
Go for it. We got time for time.
I'll
Feel free to pull those off.
Yeah, I was gonna say, with an eye on what's, you know,
Yeah.
I wanna get a sense of what's nearing the end.
Yeah.
That will drop off this year. Right? I think.
Yeah.
Like.
And they were good, someone put
Wait
on
for
there.
instance agreement, for instance.
I didn't have it up there.
Okay. Oh, you don't get a jury?
I have a question, Tom. Is Affordable Housing Trust looking at becoming general partner, co-general partner, or general partner in projects, doing like a housing, building it themselves or putting together something to build it as opposed to, is there any of that discussion happening?
Yeah, there's been a little discussion that actually came up when the secretary of EOHLC was here. And I think that part of that discussion has to do with 30B, which is the procurement part. And if somehow the administration could shift things for like municipal housing, then it would be easier for the town to do certain things. But Julian Senator Sear was definitely all ears on that. So yeah, that's definitely been talked about. I don't know.
But I wonder if we should just even put it on, because it seems crazy to me that after 2 years, the guys are gonna do Tacoma Green are gonna take 6 million and head off into the off island. Whereas if we did that here and got half of that, and did it with somebody and eventually learned how to do it and did all of it, that money would be available.
And to your point, Matt, that was the other thing that came up with was. That Sully was talking about this too, was that. in the procurement laws, if there were some allowance for like, look, Nantucket's 27 miles out to sea. We only got one bid for Orange Street, which got canceled for technical reasons. But that, like, because everything is so expensive and it's difficult to get crews here, can there be some allowance for our specific situation in seasonal community designation?
Yes,
And that might tie, that kind of ties into what you're saying.
it does, and it really, it isn't even so much exactly how to do it, but we should be exploring it. You know, so, and if someone like, Stephen Murray, they, like, if he bids on it, someone like that bids on it, they should be having a pretty good chance of getting it, because he has the whole infrastructure to do it. You know, like, and we should be encouraging that here. You know, and it was kind of funny, like the last time he bid along, he was representing some other guy who bid. And they were like they were the second or third bidder, but looking back, they had the lower price, but the other guys were a little slicker. And so the slicker thing got a higher
I
score.
gotcha.
So I just look at it like we should be, anyway, I was wondering if that should be on there as exploring how to, you know, own that process on under housing. It should that be?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of obvious, but when Christie comes back for her next update to us, definitely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
all right.
But yeah, everything you're talking about in the general sense came up last night.
Yeah, and I keep working on Christie on it, because I have a buddy who does this on the other side.
Yeah.
He says we should be co-GP, the first time. And that way we get to learn everything, we sit alongside whoever's doing it. We might pay a little bit more to them, because they're not making, you know, these guys are gonna make 5, they're gonna make 6 now.
And the other thing is, Brian's also, Herbert has also talked about,
The Civic League had.
It was. That instead of grants, et cetera, that we should somehow build
Goals, so one of the strategies.
future capital into these. That we gotta- yeah, I know you've talked about.
You should grab your lunch,
So, Adam. So, yeah. It's not, so that 1029 is their final. And it's. I just. Checking after all that. Cleaning the mini splits and those, you know, things like that. You tell people to do and not, oh, it's so it's useful, yeah. We got it kind of all, we got it.
Well, we knew that. Right, that's the whole point of the process.
Too much, so easy to figure out, so that's great, it's already done.
Yeah.
And then.
But a lot of these are ongoing. Right.
Next ongoing, some of these, yeah, this one, big water.
So at what point?
Janet, is that Louis?
Operationalize permanently.
So like, for example,
Like, it's just.
Well, for example, additional water quality site, so that's an ongoing thing where every year there's gonna be new, that's been on forever.
Right.
But if no, added 12, I'm not sure if they added 12. And that's what you can say, it stays in the budget.
Right.
So it's kind of a discussion of what happens, because.
So.
Yes.
And at some point, yeah, they. And then.
I just said.
I mean, that should be. Yeah. That's in the states.
You playing paddle yet?
I don't.
Times I'm trying
Oh.
my
So
elbow.
Oh, good. Sit down, 3-0 in the first set, and I just said,
And.
it's gonna be more dramatic this way when everyone gets 4-6-2. Just sad to hear about that.
I swear, sometimes when you're hitting, you know, paddles, you know, when you're not going
Yeah.
but like, I swear you.
But it's not more.
Yes, exactly.
It's like my last imagine when you went into it, you're like, okay, we're gonna pick on the, you know, the ad guy, and there's a safe zone and all that stuff. And then we lost it for a session, we're like,
We're-
Forgetting whatever happened to one.
Because there's.
So-
Yeah, the
The
women's
interface
soccer
thing,
team
and- no, but-
played in a
but-
good tournament
but-
in Illinois this
Right now,
weekend.
yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Right now.
It only belongs here.
Which is what they want.
Yeah, I mean, I do-
And it was
do the
watching them
evaluation,
play, it
because
was
that,
like,
that has been a.
it was like a different.
And I'm
game,
not
like, just they're so
suggesting
calm,
change.
it's up two screens, and they love
But at
it,
some
and
point,
you're watching them, and I'm like,
will-
like,
I
it's
will
scared some things about all this.
What is,
Connection.
connection.
That's why you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Actually, I
yeah.
talked to,
Thanks for asking.
Outside.
I mean, there is.
Who is head of the. Levy or Debbie or something like that. They're gonna do the.
And we need to do the evaluation.
Anyway, we were talking about something about
Yeah.
last week. Really
What,
nice.
what
Yeah.
still needs to be.
Yeah, no, it's-
Work, like, work
Yeah.
out.
And it's great because it keeps you outside in the winter. And I need that. I need a little vitamin D and a little sunshine, and a little fire. That's the one. Yeah. I had a great sky. You know, I want the clouds. I don't want the bright sun in my eyes. So.
Well, for sure.
I actually think some of them we should be doing more on, we spoke, we should be doing more of. And
I was learning, down, I think it's the Surfside,
So,
which is that.
For instance, my comment the other night about.
It's just right down.
Celebration.
Parking lot where Sense Sports were.
Where instead of 45%.
Jennings, that's it. Is that, are they even done?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Are they gonna play pickleball?
Yes, they really are.
So it-
Well,
to
To me, it's one of those topics.
I mean,
that
they were in
is-
pretty bad disrepair
Here.
earlier, so.
That- in terms of the engagement.
Yeah.
So
Traffic that's almost.
That's good. Nice. That'll be great.
And the company that moved up there now did the.
Except that's where they're doing.
Okay.
No, I know, but same.
So-
but-
So how do we message that, right?
And so there's all that, and then, so there's. I'm worried, my comments was.
It's
I'm
at the end of-
Don't take it for granted.
At the end of Old Town Road.
Okay.
I think that there's a
And
little
let it go to
bit
the
of
airport.
side of the wall a little bit.
Oh.
And, you know, and so we have to really. So it's a
Survey
big-
says,
Oh, really? Anyone?
Well, I- No, we have a membership after, but basically that gives you priority.
Yeah, we'll be interested.
Okay.
We didn't support, they didn't
The
support
only
that.
benefit.
Wow.
I mean,
Maybe four paddle, four pickle, now we're building four more pickle, two padel, two fifth paddle court, and then they have 45 park.
Wow.
Maybe a manager off the hot.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You don't give them that.
I know.
But you really
They
did.
don't get it.
No, it's.
I was just saying,
It's
all
up
right.
there, yeah.
Oh, what was it, how's it look?
It looks like once upon a time, there was never a tennis court and there's about to be some really new tennis courts. That's what it looks like. It's completely level, all the fencing's gone and there's a subsurface there. Looks like they were probably gonna be back working on it today.
Oh, cool.
And then.
Yeah, we got pictures this morning of the sunrise, but last night of the moonrise, that was pretty. This is the moon coming up last night.
The township has.
Is that a joke?
Yeah, this was down.
We have, but we have, yeah, but.
Or actually, these pictures are from steamships. Back. And then this morning, this was.
Sons, so on, so daughter, like that, we don't need to do that, but like.
So.
So it's an interesting dynamic. That's sort of
Really?
bubbling up, but I- yeah.
Well, we'll do a wrap-up conversation and
Okay.
let her go. I was gonna offer her a sandwich.
Oh, we're still.
Janet, do you want a sandwich?
We're still doing stuff.
She says yes. We're gonna do it like Willy Wonka, the telephonics of Willy Wonka show where they.
Also Mike Brew.
Send the food, Mike TV, they send the food over the TV. So apparently Lewis likes strategic planning, but it was, now must be time for his nap again, because he's gone, so.
That's right, let's see how.
So it looks like maybe some agreement between moving the DEI stuff to operationalize it, put it over in efficient, effective, which is what y'all were talking about, that makes sense. Good,
Is that that pink?
Yeah.
What is,
They gave like 200.
After the pink one, Josh?
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's the DEI
We
one
need
from
that.
healthy and vibrant to
Chris.
efficient, effective.
Yeah.
Are we gonna work with sort of just asking this, are we gonna decide in this go round what's been operationalized now and not evident on anymore, or?
I don't know, Greg, I thought everything that was up here was stuff that's underway, but not operationalized, but you all would know that better, because I don't know how the sorting was done, so we can do that if it makes sense.
We could do that. They were kind of mixed on how they responded, but the assignment was what's going on right now. But they also added in things that are accomplished, like, how they hired the real estate person, not real estate, property manager. And it said it was completed, so that's one and done. The frac tanks were procured and delivered, like, they're done. But, so we could go through that exercise.
Do you want
Also
to-
kind of want to throw out again, like, usually doesn't want to get a discussion on helping by the community and the inclusion of more, I don't know, mental health or something, just something that, yeah. There's no goal for that.
Right. Well, I mean, we can do that exercise of going through these and just very quickly, you all can tell me if it's done or operationalized, and I can just move them. I think what I'll do is if it's operationalized, I'll move it to the emerging priorities section. I'll reheader that, and if it's done, I'm just gonna put it up top. So, so
And can we make mention of stuff that, like, is, the, contract review and Council for Human Services study under?
It's right there.
yeah,
It
that's
is, okay.
done.
Okay,
Maybe we'll start at this end just because
It's done, but what to do with it?
Yeah, done.
Yeah.
yeah, implementation of.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so the study is done now, now you have to implement it, of course. So that's the HHS CRC process. The community needs assessment, you're doing the scope of work, so that's definitely underway. And partnerships to promote
Health and vibrant.
health and vibrant community.
So that's just ongoing, so it was one of the goals, and Jared was trying to get outreach to nonprofits on the island, so
Would
it's
you
on.
consider it operationalized? That's just part of how they're doing work, or does it need to stay?
I think it's not part of work, because it's one of the things that Jericho was asking during the budget process of. You need actually another person to be dedicated to doing that, like, and involve the grant management, as well as grant software. So I would say,
Okay, so we'll leave those two as underway. So if we go to housing, employee housing focus group, is that done? So that's done. Seasonal communities designation.
Well, Julie, it continues to meet, it's formed.
Oh,
and we've met several times,
that's,
but
so is it operationalized then, or does it need to stay as a underway?
Stay,
It's-
Stay, okay,
because we might still have other things
to talk about. Okay, you all tell me. Seasonal communities designation,
Done but ongoing.
so keep it as
Yeah.
underway, okay? Wow, Wade Drive seasonal dormitory,
underway.
underway.
Yep, just-
Lease to locals, that
Underway.
$400,000 grant underway. Municipal preference and
Yeah, Wiggles Lane, just right?
Wiggles and.
that's done, but we should keep it because it's sort of still, people aren't in there yet.
They haven't moved in yet,
Okay.
and I don't think there's been any lottery yet, has there? Has it?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Rental property hire that's done, so.
Okay.
RFPs on trust-owned parcels.
They're off.
They're out, but they're not done.
Feedback on goals 1 and 2, similar explore zone policies.
So Chrissy gave feedback in addition to her bullet points, and one was goals 1 and 2 are very similar, should they be combined or should they be a new goal? And that she thinks the board should maybe looking at additional avenues such as advocating for zoning changes or open policy. That was just something to think of.
It's ongoing.
So we'll keep it as ongoing, just from how this rolls forward. Does it make sense to you all that if now the staff see it, like we ought to combine goals 1 and 2, that they would do that, and when it comes back to you all, they would be combined, that would be okay? Christie thinks that makes sense, like just kind of bringing it back to you that way,
and when that comes back to the board, we should just maybe sort of have a little summary of
of
what,
what the changes are.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, all right. RFP, trust on, we already did, this was the one I was waiting for, because there's a bunch, safe harbor. Just that you're going to apply for the next 2 years, that'll get you to 2027, so that's,
So like the 2 years has been achieved through December, but then they just got another 2 years
About
committed.
About to.
Yeah, okay, so it's kind of ongoing.
Yeah, so that sounds like a cycle of something that you'll have to
Yeah.
keep doing. It's a goal to, always meaning that something has to happen to it. Seems like it's operationalized that you're doing it, but it's so important. It probably needs to stay as this ongoing activity, because that's like one of your all goals. Okay, DPW facility, that's done, right?
No,
Recruitment and retention, that's certainly an ongoing, is it operationalized? It's part of what you do every day?
I think we need to keep focus on.
Keep it focused. Our Island Home, another done one, right? Dawn? Yeah, but that's a huge, huge lift that we're working on.
Hopefully next year we can.
Yeah.
It'll be
So-
underway in a different way, OIH construction.
So y'all moved the pink sticky, which of DEI from healthy and vibrant to efficient, effective, and that sounds to me like the consent to have this be the place where that nests.
Yeah, and for me, the distinction is DEI as it's been operationalized in government has been internal to town administration, employees, et cetera, versus outfacing engagement with the community.
Yeah.
And I think someday we're gonna wanna have a conversation about
The other.
what role that office might play in a healthy and vibrant community in terms of community-wide goals versus internal to government.
But for now, this is where it is, and that the time is not there.
We should probably have two different stickies, one that says internal DEI and the other that says external communities that have operationalized DEI. We have to do that regardless.
So do you want a sticky that says external DEI over here?
Not yet.
Not yet, it's not time. So let's just keep this.
Well, in my opinion, not yet.
Yeah. Well, if you're not clamoring for community engagement on that, that's. All right, so then transportation, again, a bunch of things that are already done, right? So 2025 roadworks, obviously, that was a huge lift. Yeah, I mean, that's big, all the stuff work going on Milestone and Pulpus,
Still underway, yeah,
Wawennett Road,
still underway.
Milestone improvements, the parking management system at 2 fairgrounds,
That just started.
Surfside 25,
Oh, almost done.
almost done, Sparks.
Yep.
Keep it up
Keep it
here.
up there.
Pleasant and Williams complete streets,
Yeah, keep it up.
Yeah, that's,
sidewalks review,
that's an ongoing. right?
yeah.
I mean, is that now kind of operationalized, like, or
Yeah,
I think it's in there, but
So it's operationalized, I'm gonna move it to here.
no sidewalks.
Sorry,
Removing the needs
So- so Cielo, we'll make a note that that's when sidewalks has been operationalized.
They're doing it through beta all the time.
Evaluate cycling and walking. Rack
So it's a
map
goal.
inventory,
So yeah, that was one of the
Yes,
goals is to discourage by 5% or something like that, vehicle use. So those are the bike racks.
safety action plan,
I don't know what that is.
safety action plan.
Yeah, I need to add that last second. I don't know what it is. It's not on their chart, but I don't know.
well, then we'll leave it and
Yeah,
ask
I
for more
would-
information about it. Pleasant Street. Five Corners, Main Street,
Yeah, it's underway, yeah.
Tom Nevers.
No. The
Oh,
transportation.
yeah, Tom Nevers is, yeah, we just talked about that. It's, I guess a snag, but underway.
Newton Road, Newtown Road.
Newtown Road, yep, that's gonna happen this year.
Okay, so lots still going on. Last area, environmental leadership, Southwest RFP,
Solid waste.
solid waste, Southwest, same thing, yes.
Yeah.
Solid waste RFP, technical reviews happening.
Yeah.
Food waste pilot, complete,
Yes,
it's
sir.
done.
Whoa.
That's what,
It's complete?
I believe Jeff said, yeah.
Well, they haven't launched it yet.
Oh.
I think they've developed the kind of parameters of it, but it's not underway yet.
We'll put the complete at the top and say we need to complete the food waste pilot, how's that?
Yeah, it's underway.
Okay.
Oh,
Um,
I know, Bethany biodiversity study. I don't even know if that is.
The what?
Bethany.
biodiversity study, biodiversity.
Oh, that's that annual study thing that NRD, I think, is part of with, the biodiversity.
I don't know.
But it's part of it's now part of their routine, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so I would say it's been operationalized.
Operationalized, yeah. Yeah, we see this a lot where people are like, well, these are the things we're doing,
Yeah.
it's like, but it doesn't always mean it needs to be here. Master and harbor plan updates, obviously, those are huge. Sam Warren head contract,
I just got it, so I'm ready to go.
What is that again?
The landfill, sampling and landfill.
Oh.
closure.
Oh, yeah,
harbor and groundwater studies. They're
that's
underway.
underway, I think.
There's
That's
two of
what
them.
it says, and the additional water sites.
Oh, bless you. Yeah, they added 12.
Coastal resiliency funds tracking system.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure we're totally done with that yet. We
So
were
that's
trying to
underway.
make sure that we have about $1 million a year for coastal resiliency projects. It's sort of unallocated. But we want to make sure that
You're tracking.
it's centralized so that somebody doesn't start using it, but somebody else already used it.
That would be important. Yeah, only spend it one time.
Right.
So it's NIR and US, and that's just outreach.
So
So
efforts,
they happen this year.
okay.
They're gonna be ongoing.
Coastal resilience filter.
That was just, Vince just rolled that out, so it's.
That's still being
It's
developed, I would
completed,
say,
but not used yet.
but it is, and it's also getting around to be operationalized. If I can make that visible.
Second pond opening and management study,
Yeah,
MIT and
and,
Worcester,
Sue, was told,
Woods Hole, oh, cool.
I didn't even know they were doing that.
Okay,
It was on their chart.
all right, and then,
The frac tanks are purchased,
okay,
so you can take that off.
done.
Are they installed?
One installing all that. Yeah. The other one have to have a new concrete.
Also, that's just kind of something that would happen regardless of the plan.
It should have happened, yeah.
Well, and that's one thing we might, want to be thinking about, so, because there's two ways that, that the staff kind of connect the work plan. There's stuff that they do every year, like if you think about the FY 25 road work that's underway. I mean, there's an annual plan for doing road work. And it absolutely contributes to success that you all have. It aligns with the strategic plan. It's part of their daily work. And so it's kind of the difference between usually in the strategic plan, what you would report on would be specific projects or initiatives that are designed to kind of move the needle, but aren't necessarily part of your annual work plan cycles. And so again, we continue to get better at this and refine it. And staff wants you also to just kind of get the connection, I think, between how what they do, what they're charged to do on a daily basis is contributing to success in these areas, so.
I have
Yeah.
one
Matt.
question for the group. Under transportation, do we want to throw a bone to be back and put the bike path signage issue on? Finalize that this year? And the reason I'm asking, I was in the development right behind my employee housing yesterday, and it's brand new signs, brand new development. And they've signed it with 4 signs, 2 to the bikes and 2 to the drivers, which is completely unclear, and the bike shouldn't stop on that spot because the person going across the travelway is the car. And so so we're still continuing to add more nuisance signs that everybody ignores and that we fight and the cars and the bikers fight over. So, so I think it's one of those things where they've been asking for it and for years, and do we throw it on and try to get an answer one way or the other this year?
Is that a budget item?
No, I
No.
think it's just
I think it's interesting because there's one that I know of from where I bike on Bartlett Road. And I was talking to Meg Trudell and she said I need to go back to their planning permit and find out what they were told to do. Because it could be they were told, they put signs on the bike path,
It was part of,
not on the private road exiting across the bike path. And then the sign facing the driver says, be careful crossing the bike path. It's not a stop sign. And it really should be the opposite way around. It should be, the bikers should have careful crossing traffic. And the cars should have a stop sign. I actually think this is worth, I mean, I think they're working on it, but I think if we state it as a,
I would support it.
yeah.
It's extremely confusing.
And it's one of those things that we just keep being told there's nothing we can do in the state law and this is different and that is different. But then we're still, if we are putting things in like this, then it isn't really part of the, part of what we're doing yet.
So tell me what the sticky note should say.
So, determine, so as I understand it, the regulation, the bylaw now reads that the party responsible for an intersection between a road and a bike path is the car, unless it's a particularly highly trafficked
Major
intersection
intersection, like,
where stop signs for the bikes can be installed, but that's a discretionary decision, I think, by traffic safety. And maybe it's about convening traffic safety BPAC to
planning board.
clarify the intent of the bylaw and and some rules for implementation.
So if I wrote, ensure that the bike path and roadway signage are aligned with town bylaws and ask VPAC.
And apply and policy on exceptions is clarified.
Okay. All right, I'm writing that down.
Yeah, that's one that could be done.
Yeah, that would be one we
It
could
could
get
be-
done this year. We
yeah.
could, they've done it 2 or 3 times. They've looked at all the bike paths, taken pictures and so it's really, we could get it done.
Yeah.
There also needs to be an associated massive educational campaign for
100%.
everybody
Yeah.
about who has the right of way here, because people coming from off island have no idea. And they're, I mean, good luck trying to get everybody understanding. of this,
Yeah.
Since it's different in almost every other place.
But for instance, if planning's issuing a permit to a development,
Yeah.
it can be written into their permit that they have to install a stop sign
In,
at the end of their street.
yes, in the
Where
newer
it crosses,
ones
you
that
know.
have not been approved yet, yes.
So that we could get consistent.
The other thing is even the streets that are, even so the private roads coming up through that focus and stuff. We own, the town owns a segment of that. We can put a sign on our own thing, asking cars to stop, some of the worst places are where it is along there where they come flying out of there. Or it's where people are renting and the people don't even know, they come in at night, they have no idea that there's even a bike path there and they just come speeding right through because there's no sign. So we could, as a town, we could just take the ones that are on the bike path now and stick them toward the cars. And there's things like that maybe they're not, 100% technically legal, but it would make things so much safer. It would make it so clear and so much safer than it is now, that I don't see why we wouldn't just try it.
And I also think the continued repainting of the stop lines on the bike path at intersections where bikes don't need to stop is a problem, because that's also very confusing. So there's a bunch of elements to this.
Okay, so that's a good one to add. Anything else? What's kind of come to mind? Well, then we'll close with parting thoughts. I always give the chair the chance to go first or last, so that's up to you, Brooke. Want to go first or last?
I'll go first.
All right.
I
CLO will capture.
just appreciate the collaborative nature. We don't always agree, but we discuss directly, we're communicating directly with one another, back and forth with staff. And I really appreciate that dynamic.
Malcolm.
I agree. I like these meetings. I like this kind of meeting. I like our executive session meetings. Because we can sit around the table and actually talk. And I wish we had more time for these kind of meetings, not the formal ones on Wednesday night, because they kind of get their Wednesday night. This is how we really exchange ideas and get to know each other.
Rick.
Better every year, this meeting, I think, and so. Say.
Yeah, I think we're making progress.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same thing, actually, like night and day from the first time doing this to where we are now, I think real things are getting done.
Yeah. Janet, how about you?
A lot's
Next
happened in 5 years to get this thing on track and part of everybody's daily consideration, so congratulations.
I agree with everything that people said here, and I appreciate the ability of me and my two assistant town managers to be able to express concerns and opinions in front of and with the board without like retribution later.
Yeah.
Oh, wait till
Safe
tomorrow.
space.
Wait till Wednesday.
Wednesday, it's coming, it's coming. Done.
I think it's, really nice to realign, but also to see how far we've progressed.
Tom,
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that's been said. I think these are really good for us to have and talk about our guiding document. And I just want to say that it was a heck of a summer for everybody in town government. And I think everybody handled it with cool heads. And, you know, onward and upward with all that. And also there's a lot of stress out there with a lot of different changes and the election coming up and I think that we do a good job at separating ourselves from kind of the national stuff, because all politics is national now, unfortunately. And I think we do a good job at focusing on what our mission is and what our duties are, instead of getting bogged down in some of that stuff. So I appreciate my colleagues and the dialogues that we have in all our meetings. I never feel like, you know, we're at each other's throats or mad at each other. And we, like Brooke said, we disagree, but we do it in a non-disagreeable way.
it's wonderful.
Okay, I'm gonna both start and finish. How's that?
Excellent, that's fine.
I just want to express a note of gratitude for whoever started this process. John, I think you were on the board, Matt, you were on the board, the folks the boards that preceded us that got this going along with town administration. Thank you, because I think it's changed the game a lot.
It took 2 or 3 times, I would say,
Mhm.
at least 2, I remember, maybe it was 3. And probably 3, because of Whitey and those guys tried.
Yeah.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah.
Good.
We
That's-
started with 3 categories
Mhm,
Yep.
that's right, 3 categories.
this round.
And Bobby DeCosta.
And didn't Whitey have lists like with thousands of things?
Yes.
Actually did.
So this is,
It was an end,
Better.
it ended immediately.
Good.
and Deanne ran one of them. Back in the day, when Jimmy and I were on the board, we were
Yeah.
down at the, yeah, this is before your time. And this was,
Over the bank.
yeah, we were above the bank, but now we were down in, White Elephant, somewhere by the White Elephant one time too, I think.
That's right. We did do something that, yeah.
All right, well, thank you for that, and thank you all for having us. We appreciate being here, and Janet, thank you for all you've done for us. And bye, Louis, also. Just give him a little scritch on the ears for us, and well, this meeting's adjourned. So we'll end the meeting, whoever's in charge of
Oh,
it can end
I
it.
think
Louis, the assistant to the
Louis,
assistant.
Yeah.
assistant to the strategic
he's
initiatives.
the mastermind.
Yes.
Yeah, bye, Louis. Bye, Janet.
Bye, Janet.
Bye, Janet.
Oh, so
So
you can end Concord. Oh, not.
The HHS,
I'll do
CRC,
it.
the vehicle. It's
yeah,
Yeah.
projects down the
It's done.
implementation hasn't happened yet.
I find it unfortunate when one of the class doesn't show up at all.